Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto saved Zoe Percy Jackson. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by FanFiction and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The Big Apple, a giant city with a never-ending thrum of noise and traffic and its own unique orchestra of car horns, angry drivers and people screaming, "I'm walking here." Constantly crowded streets, constantly pissed off people, finished with a touch of a light show luminizing a concrete forest of skyscrapers reaching to the heavens. In one case in particular, literally. More on that later. A curious, stark blonde teenager with whisker marks on his face wearing a plain burnt orange hoodie and a pair of distressed jeans, casually strolled with a coffee in his hand and headphones covering his ears. He stood out like a sore thumb in the busy streets of New York City. A dark pair of aviators obscure his eyes from view, but do nothing to conceal whisker-like marks adorning both his cheeks. Seemingly unbeknownst to him, a large snake was weaving between crowds of pedestrians, unnoticed by passers-by, malevolently inching closer to the aloof blonde. The serpent coiled to strike, intending to pierce its fangs into the prey it had stalked so meticulously. The blonde flashed from existence, and a young Libyan snake's head flailed from its body, then faded into golden dust. The incredibly handsome teenager released a sigh, and a curved sword flashed from existence. He groaned, rotating his shoulder lazily in its socket. The bustling crowds of New York continued on, ignorant of the danger that had been prowling among them. "What's the point of being a badass, handsome mercenary if no one notices you?" the man snickered. Baba 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 baba. Baba 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 baba. Click. Resident mercenary speaking, "How can I help you?" The blonde man spoke in monotone, pausing to listen to an indecipherable voice. Yeah. Got it. Sure. You're the man with the plan, boss." With an audible sigh, he slides his cell phone back into his pocket. "Rest in peace, my ass." Line break. The high school dance. Really? "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, not a weird guy trolling in a high school parking lot looking for a prom date," the blonde merc grumbled, kicking a clump of snow as he walked towards the boarding school known as Westover Hall. "What the hell kind of business does Corpse King think I'm running here?" With a sigh, he pushed open the large oak doors and slipped in quietly and released a low whistle. "Fancy," he chortled to himself, taking in his surroundings. The place was huge. The walls were lined with battle flags and weapon displays. Antique rifles, battle axes, and a bunch of other stuff. A large ornate rug stretched down the entrance hall, and banners and streamers hung from the walls a ways down. Music played in the distance. The headmaster is definitely a Mars legacy. With a slight hop in his step, he walked towards the music, swaying gently to the rhythmic beats. Green Day. What kind of kids these days? No taste. With a roll of his eyes, he stepped into the gymnasium, looking for his targets. Let's see, brother and a sister, black hair, kinda reminiscent of old deadhead himself Foila. Targets acquired. He started towards him until he noticed three more teens that, like himself, were there for the two siblings. A blonde girl, a dark-haired boy, and a girl with jet black hair, each highly conspicuous, entirely out of place, and looking directly at his two charges. No such thing as a simple job. Die immortales, gods really do know how to fuck everything, literally and figuratively. Whatever. At least I'm going to get some fun out of this. With a derisive snort, he made his way towards the attractive Ravenet demigod. "Excuse me, I saw you didn't have a dancing partner and I was wondering if I could step in," Naruto said silkily, a sly smirk etched into his face. The Shika girl jumped at his voice before stammering out a surprised reply. Sorry, I can't. I'm supposed to be taking care of something for the headmaster," she said, attempting a semblance of remorse. "I'm aware. Sadly, we both have a thorn in our side preventing us from retrieving our little angels. So, how about a dance to pass the time?" Now, the smirk had shifted into a twisted sneer. The Ravenet tensed and made to reach into her pocket. Naruto's hand blurred out, catching her wrist and placing her hand on his shoulder, while his free hand snaked around her waist. "Don't do something you'll regret, doll. Relax, dance the night away. We've got time. The manticore won't make a move in the middle of the dance. Besides, your two partners will keep an eye on my little angels." A furious scowl glared up into the boy's face before taking on a look of resignation. With stiff posture, the girl allowed herself to be gently swayed to the rhythm of the music. He grinned down at her, towering over her by almost a solid foot. "Naruto Uzumaki." "What?" "My name," he said, looking at her in amusement. A frazzled blush met his gaze. "Alia Grace." "A pleasure. I take it you're from Camp Half-Blood. A daughter of Zeus, I presume?" "How could you tell?" "You take after your father." Scowl and all, Naruto replied with a laugh before reaching up and tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. By now, Thalia's face was a bright crimson and her glare had been magnified tenfold. "Who the hell are you?" she asks furiously, utterly bewildered by the strange blonde man. Naruto then casually spun her and tugged her close, making her yelp in shock. With a laugh, he leaned in closely, his breath tickling her ear. "Just your average mercenary. You should probably go catch up to fish breath spawn before he makes a mess that I can't clean up," Naruto said, gesturing to the door her dark-haired accomplice had darted through. With a shove, she pushed Naruto from their awkward embrace and fled for her friend, gesturing to her other accomplice to follow her. "That was fun." Naruto reached into his pocket and withdrew a set of what appeared to be car keys. He whimsically strolled after the teenagers. "Showtime." Line break. "There is a clearing ahead," Thorn said. "We will summon your ride." "What ride?" Bianca demanded. "Where are you taking us?" "Silence, you insufferable girl. Don't talk to my sister that way," Naiko said, shivering from both the cold and fear. Percy Jackson knew he was in a right pickle. This was the absolute worst thing that could have happened. He desperately screamed at Grover to come get them through their empathy link, but he felt nothing in return. He followed from a distance away, clutching the pen that would transform into Riptide in less than a second firmly in his hand. The woods had opened up to a cliff over the seas, surrounded by woods on either side. Snow gently rained down from above and a brisk air buffeted against the four. Percy shuddered, his mind racing as he desperately tried to think of a plan to get themselves out of the frying pan. Slowly, he stalked closer, trying to get the drop on the beast. "Manticore?" A familiar voice screamed, followed by a bolt of lightning shooting towards Thorn, blasting him squarely in the chest. Thorn returned with a volley of spikes that sailed toward the girl and the trio. Percy and the D'Angelos were knocked to the floor as an invisible force plowed into them. "Percy, what were you thinking going after a manticore by yourself?" Annabeth whispered into his ear furiously as her invisible body pressed him into the snow. Had this been a different situation, Percy may have been mildly embarrassed amongst other things. IJ just thought another bolt of lightning cut him off and he watched as Thorn sprung to the side, swiftly dodging Thalia's attack. He launched another volley of poison-coated spikes at Thalia, which knocked her to the ground despite being deflected by Aegis. With a groan, Thalia stabbed her lance into the snow next to her and hoisted herself back to her feet. A sharp voice that permeated the clearing suddenly stopped all movement. "Thorn, you sly old manticore, you. You'd think after existing for as long as you have you'd learn the right way to get a pretty girl on her back for you." A figure stepped into the clearing. His bright blonde hair was a beacon, his blue eyes pierced through the darkness, pinning the beast in his place, and a long, slightly curved blade the color of midnight with a golden edge in his hands. "You." The manticore took a shaky step back, his eyes wide with fear. The beast dropped onto all fours and shifted into its natural form. A mane sprouted around his neck and his clothes morphed into fur as claws sprouted from his newly formed paws. His face took on the features of a lion's and a scorpion tail swung furiously behind his flank. Naruto grinned. His vicious smile looked sharper than any blade. Two sharp fangs peeked out and he took a step towards the beast and the blade in his hands became wreathed in flames. He swung his blade in a slow, intricate circle, the flames clinging and dancing along the odd blade, hypnotizing his surrounding audience. A volley of arrows shot out of the trees, punching into the manticore, stopping Naruto in his tracks. His grin was instantly replaced with a frown. The manticore instantly dispersed into gold dust, signifying his return to Tartarus. From the tree stepped around 24 silver-clad teenage girls, all with bows trained on the blonde. "The hunters." Annabeth cried out with excitement. Thalia muttered, "Oh, wonderful. I like you already." "Touch why? You'd think people would greet a stranger more kindly," Naruto said, lazily shifting his sword back into a key and storing it in the pocket of his jeans. "Thou art no stranger, Uzumaki." One of the girls pushed her hood back and stepped forward a few feet away and had her arrow pointed directly at Naruto's face. His face changed into a dark frown. "Oh. It's nice to see you're doing alright," she growled in response. "Oh, that is enough. Hunters, stow your bows. Uzumaki shall cause no harm. Is that not right, my treacherous nephew?" A small girl commanded, coming to the forefront of the group of girls. With a snarl of reluctance, Zoe stowed her bow and arrow and stormed off. By now, Percy and Annabeth had stood up and moved protectively in front of the D'Angelos. The blond man made his way towards the four half-bloods. "Naiko and Bianca D'Angelo. Your father hired me as your guardian, it would seem. Are you alright?" Naruto asked, obviously false concern filled his voice. Percy summoned Riptide and pointed it at Naruto's throat. "Sorry, but I've had a long night and you're stressing me out," Percy angrily said. Thalia approached from behind, her body, too, tensed for a fight. Naruto merely grinned in amusement, summoning flames that flicked around his feet, melting the surrounding snow. "Enough. Hunters, make camp. Demigods, you will join me." You will join me for the evening as well, Uzumaki. You heard the lady, no worries. I'm pretty cute and cuddly once you get to know me, Naruto winked. Percy looked at him with obvious annoyance, his sword still in his grip at his side. Testy little shit. Excuse me, but I don't know you. I hate to be a jerk, but who are you to tell us to do anything? Percy asked, a tone of impatience resounding from his voice. Annabeth winced, while Thalia groaned and muttered under her breath. Naruto's light grin instantly lit up into full-on beaming. I stand corrected. I love you, baby fish. I am Artemis, goddess of the hunt, Perseus Jackson. You will join me. Percy gulped. Yes ma'am. The satyr wandered out into the clearing. Hey guys, what did I mo? The satyr turned, attempting to casually walk out of the clearing before Thalia grabbed him by his collar and pulled him back towards the camp that was being hastily prepared. Page break. Naruto lazily laid next to a fire that was conveniently between him and Lady Artemis. At his left was the 4 campers from Camp Half-Blood and at his right were the D'Angelos. Next to Artemis sat Zoe Nightshade. Around him the hunters had set up other campfires and tents and prepared to set in for the night. Zoe's eyes were firmly fixed on Naruto, her fingers twitching next to a knife that was sheathed in her belt. Percy looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, as did Thalia, and Annabeth looked at Artemis with absolute adoration. The youngest D'Angelo was drilling the poor satyr about Greek gods, and Bianca looked entirely overwhelmed. Everyone was uncomfortable, no one knew what to say, and the snow was making everyone miserable. Overall, it seemed like an incredibly successful night to one Naruto Uzumaki. Just like old times, huh, auntie? Naruto drawled, his disinterest in the entire situation was palpable. Zoe snarled, and Naruto held his hands up placatingly, looking at her with a light smile. He stood up. Excuse me, but I've been working all day, and the dragon needs to breath, if you know what I mean. The blonde man walked from the fire and towards the woods. Disgusting pig, Zoe growled under her breath and furiously stabbed at the fire with a nearby stick. Artemis released a sigh and stared deeply into the fire. Her hand reached out to Zoe's shoulder and rested there in an attempt to comfort her. Zoe's tension fell and her face turned into an impassive look. Lady Artemis, if you don't mind me asking, who is that man? Annabeth asked, curiously looking after the man. That is a thing. Has no purpose. Uzumaki is simply tolerated by the gods because of necessity and because we can't actually do anything about him. Tread carefully. It seems the fates have tied your camp to him and that which is tied to him is caught in the inferno in which he reigns. The goddess of the moon replied. Her voice was filled with anger and what seemed like hurt. What's he to you and your hunters? The son of Poseidon interjected, befuddled by the blonde enigma. Annabeth's hands rose to her face at his obvious lack of tact. Naruto is my nephew. To my hunters, he is a traitor, she replied shortly. And to Nightshade? Thalia asked curiously. Zoe tensed angrily and prepared to speak before she was interrupted by Artemis. Naruto is her Orion. At that, Zoe stood angrily and exclaimed. My lady. It is true, Zoe. You were enamored with him. Perhaps you even still are. Even Naruto's story is similar to that of Orion's, Artemis replied curtly. Zoe's hands shook with rage. This not their business. They are campers, my lady, and I care not, my lieutenant. You will be spending time with them, eventually it would have come out. I have decided you will accompany them to Camp Half-Blood where you will stay until I return. The winds are changing, something is stirring, I must hunt it. I fear what may become of us all if I do not. I will not put any of you in danger. Do not argue my command, Zoe, she cut her off before she could respond. The goddess had a slight tremble in her shoulders and despite her youthful appearance, looked ancient. Satyr, would you take young Nico and perhaps indulge him for a while? I must talk to his sister about a pressing matter. Zoe, please recover Naruto. I must speak with him as well. Yes, my lady. With veiled reluctance, Zoe walked from the campfire toward where the blonde had slipped off to, fury in each of her steps. Annabeth. Thalia. You need not stay, please rest, you will need it. Time shall soon be filled with strife and one must find repose when possible. Understanding the dismissal, the two disembarked to find a tent. Hey, Annabeth, go ahead without me. I think I'm gonna go for a walk, Thalia said suddenly. You sure? I'll go with you, Annabeth offered. No, it's fine, you're tired. I'll find you later. Annabeth nodded sleepily, then ducked inside their tent. Thalia strolled, taking in the campsite. She'd considered joining them since Luke's betrayal, if she were honest with herself. Luke had been the reason she hadn't previously. She couldn't leave him behind. If she left camp, this would be what greeted her, the question was if this is what she wanted. The only thing left that tied her to camp was Annabeth, and Annabeth had Percy to look after her. She didn't need Thalia anymore like when they were kids. Being a hunter would give her the family that was taken from her, she wouldn't be alone. As she walked, she heard heated voices from the other side of a tent. She sneaked forward, curiosity getting the better of this particular cat, and tuned into the pair of voices. "You left," a decidedly female voice said, filled with sorrow. "I never said I was going to stay permanently," the familiar male voice said, his aloof tone striking a resounding chord. "Naruto." The strange blonde enigma of a man whom she danced with. That made the female voice. "Oh, you know what would have happened had I stayed. It wasn't going to be like Hippolytus, I wasn't going to be inducted into the hunt. Had I stayed, I would have been forced to leave. Had I stayed you would have left with me and lost your immortality. I wasn't going to take your family from you. Wasn't your choice to make, Naruto. I loved you and you tossed it away. And now thou art naught but a hired mercenary. Thou has abandoned the sacred teachings of the hunt." Dahlia's face burned and she slowly inched away from the voices back to hers and Annabeth's tent. "Amidzo, I did what was best for you, don't you understand?" Naruto snarled, his eyes flashing a deep red. The loud voice of the man froze Thalia. "You chose to do as what thou found to be easiest. Don't make excuses. You knew how I felt, but you were afraid. Afraid of an actual future beyond endless wandering." Zoe retorted. Naruto jolted forward, grabbing the front of her shirt, lifting her to his eye level. A nearby tree burst into flames and his heavy breathing filled the clearing. Slowly, he brought her back to the forest floor. "My lady has called thee to her side to discuss Bianca's future. We must go. I have nothing more to say to you." Zoe coldly replied, her arms shaking with barely restrained rage. "Fine. Lead on," Naruto replied icily. Thalia stood frozen behind a tree, not moving an inch until she was sure the pair was gone. They returned to the campfire they'd left previously, where Artemis had yet to move, and Bianca sat nervously, looking between the three intimidating figures. "Now that your guardian has returned, Bianca, we must now discuss where your future leads from here. You have two choices before you, both ultimately lead to you going to Camp Half-Blood. However, you can journey there to become a camper or as a member of the hunt. The choice is yours." Artemis ignored the obvious tension between the recently arrived pair. Bianca stuttered, baffled by the offer. "The hunter?" she asked, unsure of how to reply. "Yes. As a hunter, you'll have to." Naruto simply tuned out from the goddess's words. Why he had to be here, he had no clue. It wasn't his job to decide her future, what was he, her father? If the rotting sack of godly flesh downstairs wasn't objecting, he sure as hell wasn't going to bother. Be warned though. You can never fall in love. You'll also likely rarely be able to see your brother again. The choice is yours. Finished Artemis, her tone never changing throughout the entire speech. Bianca had always cared for her brother and had not been able to be a girl since her mother died. She had to be responsible. To be able to let go and have a family that would take care of her while being able to have fun was simply too good to let go. Sure, it was selfish, but after everything, she wanted to be selfish. "I accept," she said calmly. "Wonderful. We shall attend to the formal ceremony later. For now, go join your brother." Bianca stood with trembling legs and departed from the campfire, leaving the goddess and two teens. Naruto met Artemis's eyes. "My brother will be providing transportation to Camp Half-Blood at dawn," she said blandly. Naruto's shoulders squared off slightly before he released a sigh and nodded. He stood from the campfire and made his way to his own tent, ignoring the stares of the hunters as he did. Why can't these jobs ever be simple? Such is the fate of a man fated to be a tool of destiny. Line break. "Uzumaki, thy must awaken. Apollo will arrive shortly," Zoe's voice spoke from just outside the entrance of his tent. One bleary eye glared at the tent's flap before he slowly shrugged out of the cocoon of blankets he had wrapped himself in his sleep. It was colder, darker, and snowier than ever. Up on the hill, Westover Hall's windows were completely lightless. Dawn was approaching, but as of now, darkness engulfed the cliffside. The hunters broke camp as quickly as they'd set it up. Artemis stared into the east and Bianca sat off to one side, talking with Nico, likely explaining her decision to join the hunt. Thalia, Grover, Annabeth and Percy were huddled together talking lowly, while Percy sent the occasional glance at Bianca. So baby Kelp was informed of Bianca's decision and disagrees. Go figure. Naruto snorted derisively, leaning against a tree, looking towards the east as well. His fists curled in his palms. "Damn that man." "Don't look," Artemis advised. "Not until he parks." There was a sudden burst of light on the horizon and a blast of warmth. The snow had melted around a Porsche 918 Spider in a perfect circle that had suddenly appeared. The driver stepped out, revealing a man that appeared to be in his early 20s, with blonde hair and bright, blue eyes, tanned skin, and a smile that could melt. Literally. "Damn. Apollo is hot." Thalia muttered. "He looks like that Naruto guy," Percy observed, resulting in Thalia becoming a blushing mess. "I think I might start to like our resident waterboy." Naruto snickered. "Little sister?" Apollo called. If his teeth were any wider he could have blinded the ensemble without the sun car. What's up? You never call. You never write. I was getting worried. Artemis eyed. I'm fine, Apollo. And I am not your little sister. Hey, I was born first. He said petulantly. We're twins. How many millennia do we have to argue? So what's up? He interrupted. Got the girls with you, I see. You all need some tips on archery. Or perhaps you need tips on wooing. Apollo grinned, wiggling his eyebrows suggestively. Artemis grit her teeth. I need a favor. I have some hunting to do, alone. I need you to take my companions to Camp Half-Blood. Sure, sis. Then he raised his hands in a stop-everything gesture. I feel a haiku coming on. The hunters all groaned. Apparently they'd met Apollo before. He cleared his throat and held up one hand dramatically. Green grass breaks through snow. Artemis pleads for my help. I am so cool. He grinned at us, waiting for applause. That last line was only 4 syllables, Artemis said, dragging her palm down her face. Apollo frowned. Was it? Yes. He started muttering to himself. Zoe Nightshade turned to us. Lord Apollo has been going through this haiku phase ever since he visited Japan. 'Tis not as bad as the time he visited Limerick. If I'd had to hear one more poem that started with, there once was a goddess from Sparta. I've got it. Apollo announced. I am so awesome. That's 5 syllables. He bowed, looking very pleased with himself. Naruto felt an intense headache coming on. And now, sis. Transportation for the hunters, you say? Good timing. I was just about ready to roll. These demigods will also need a ride, Artemis said, pointing to us. Some of Chiron's campers. No problem. Apollo checked them out, eyes briefly stopping on both Thalia and Percy. An odd look gleamed in his eyes. At this, Naruto stepped forward, finally involving himself in this whole debacle. Upon noticing him, Apollo paled and removed the sunglasses that had been covering his eyes. The man's eyes were blue, with a white halo surrounding his iris. Naruto. Didn't see you there, how have you been? Work been good? Apollo spoke quickly, attempting to engage with the blonde mercenary. Good enough. I'll be taking a ride to camp as well. That's great. Maybe we could catch up during the ride. Not interested. At this, Apollo pouted, a childish frown adorning his face. With that, he clicked a button and with a flash the Porsche turned into a shuttle bus. Zoe ordered the hunters to start loading. She picked up her camping pack and Apollo said, "Here, sweetheart. Let me get that." Zoe recoiled. Naruto tensed and let out a low growl. Brother, Artemis chided. You do not help my hunters. You do not look at, talk to, or flirt with my hunters. And you do not call them sweetheart. Apollo spread his hands in mock innocence. Sorry, forgot. Hey, sis, where are you off to, anyway? Hunting, Artemis said. It's none of your business. I'll find out. I see all. Know all. Artemis snorted. Just drop them off, Apollo. Naruto, make sure he doesn't make a complete ass of himself. I will see you by winter solstice. Zoe, you are in charge of the hunters. Do well. Do as I would do. Zoe straightened. Yes, my lady. Artemis knelt and touched the ground as if looking for tracks. When she rose, she looked troubled. So much danger. The beast must be found. She sprinted toward the woods and melted into the snow and shadows. Apollo turned and grinned, jangling the car keys on his finger. So, he said. Who wants to drive? The contingent of campers and hunters filed onto the bus. Naruto took a seat towards the front, next to Thalia. Across from them sat Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Zoe sits a few seats away next to one of her fellow hunters, looking at Naruto and Thalia curiously. They sat quietly, before Thalia turned to him. So Lord Apollo is your dad. At this, Naruto snorts and nods. Regrettably. You could say that where he is the light, I am the shadow, and you'd be more correct than you know. Thalia looked at the mysterious blonde enigma and quickly shook her head, snapping herself out of her daze. You don't really seem to like him very much, Thalia observed. Naruto nodded in response. Yeah. Like all Olympians, he's kind of a neglectful except he has a habit of royally fucking things up for everyone, especially with his prophecies, he muttered darkly. Thalia grimaced, nodding in understanding. After a few seconds' pause, she continued. So you and Nightshade, huh? What's up with that? Naruto tensed. You ask a lot of questions. Cheekily, the daughter of Zeus replied, you look like you're full of answers. At this, Naruto outright laughed. It was a startlingly warm sound, filled with mirth, and left Thalia and several hunters blushing. Zoe and I, it's complicated. I was someone who she could relate to, someone who understood her pain and could talk to her as a peer. I never attempted to do anything more than simply be her friend. Eventually, she began to develop feelings that I wouldn't let myself have, and as a result, I left. That's the short of it. Naruto said wistfully. He surprised Dahlia with his forthcomingness. She loved you and you didn't love her? It wasn't as simple as that. I cared for her, however, because of that, I had to go. You know the hunter's oath? He asked. To never fall in love unless you wish to be exiled from the hunt and stripped of immortality. Exactly. I was unsure of my feelings and on the off chance I didn't actually love her, I left so she wouldn't lose everything she held dear. I know what it's like to lose the people you consider your family. He explained, a look of detachment in his eyes. Dahlia shivered. Why come to camp? I have a job. The Angela's father contracted me to look after them and I owe him pretty majorly. So, that's exactly what I'll do until the contract is fulfilled. With that, the conversation came to a close because Naruto stood up and went to speak with his father, the driver. Grover slid over to where the blonde was previously sitting. So? You seem pretty snug with Mr. Big, Sunny and Dangerous, Grover wiggled his eyebrows suggestively. Lightning crackled. Let me zap you back into reality, sheep boy. Half-Blood was entirely lackluster in appearance. Naruto was honestly bored already and he'd just stepped from Appalachiatrod. He took in his surroundings, surveying the large house on the hill to the cabins a short distance away from his position at the edge of the mess hall. He had no wish to interact with the campers any more than he absolutely had to, for the sake of this miserable contract the bastard down below had roped him into. The hunters bustled past him towards the empty table dedicated to their cabin, as did each of the campers. Honestly, you'd expect a group of wannabe heroes to at least act like they're preparing to fight for their lives, not as a bunch of teens on a getaway from their parents. He sighed heavily out his nose. He lazily trimmed his nails with a kunai he'd retrieved from seemingly nowhere, occasionally looking up at the big table where Chiron and Dionysa surveyed the campers in an almost fatherly manner, while Dionysa simply bore a hole in Naruto with a glare of utter contempt. Be a hero as long as it suits your fancy. Eventually, even if you save the world, your greatest supporters will see you as nothing more than a beast to be put down with a dark glare. Naruto met Dionysus's eyes challengingly. Try me. Erringing interrupts Naruto from his dark musings, bringing about a silence in the mess hall, and all present looked to Chiron, who was gently tapping his glass with a utensil. Pampers, it is my delight to introduce to you to a new half-blood who will be joining us. Hail, Nico D'Angelo, who is as of yet unclaimed, a chorus of polite greetings resounds, and Nico stands and delivers a cheeky bow, bringing a slight almost imperceivable grin to Naruto's face. Oh yeah. We're going to get along famously, kiddo. Additionally, let us welcome the hunters of Artemis. May you share our hearth and share in our wealth during your stay, Chiron said, grandly gesturing towards the hunters, who'd separated from the campers and sat at the table designated to Artemis. This time, fewer voices sounded in greeting. It seemed that the children of the gods were just as good at holding grudges as their forebears. Now, let us feast. At this, Chiron clapped twice and reclined. At this, happy chattering began and the children began to indulge. Predictably, a camper stood up and pointed towards Naruto. Leave it to a child of Athena to cause unnecessary trouble. What about him? At this, Chiron shifted uneasily, his body trotting side to side. Dionysus visibly contained a snarl of rage. Naruto pushed himself from his resting place and moved towards the center of the pavilion. Yes, what about me, oh great trainer of heroes? Naruto asked with a snort. As the son of Apollo, I imagine you'll. Except I'm not just the son of Apollo, now am I? Naruto interrupted. The campfire in the middle of the pavilion had dimmed down to a low simmer, the flames barely licking above the woodpile. Uzumaki. Do please shut up before you inevitably prove how you're little more than a mad dog, Dionysus cut in, lazily stirring the drink on the table in front of him with his finger, again. Dionysus, perhaps you should learn to speak only when spoken to, unless you'd like another one of your son's heads placed on your throne in Olympus, Naruto mocked. The smell of grapes filled the air as Dionysus rose from his seat, the chair scraping loudly on the wood underneath it. Flames sparked from Naruto's sleeves, and the surrounding shadows darkened to being nearly opaque. The campers looked on with a mixture of shock and fear as this unknown man picked a fight with who they all knew to be one of the major gods of Olympus. Enough. Chiron roared, this camp was founded as a place of peace, I won't have it play host to another of your pissing contests, Uzumaki. The sparks died out and the shadows receded, as did the smell of grapes. He started it, not my fault that I'm more than willing to finish it, him and every child that's come out of that worm-infested sack of his airing of fire surrounds Naruto. I won't be staying here. I have an apartment and besides, Naruto looks Dionysus directly in the eye, I'm just a flash away. With that, Naruto blinked from existence, leaving only a plume of smoke in his wake. The tension amongst the campers slowly releases and murmurs break out. Chiron clears his throat. Campers, it seems this year we'll be playing host to a rather odd individual. I ask you all to tread lightly and treat him well. He's not a good man, but he is loyal. Do not fear him, but remember that he is dangerous. If he says you're interfering in his work, I implore you to simply leave him be. That is all. Please, go back to each of your cabins and rest. Capture the flag shall be postponed for tomorrow night. With that, a somber mood settles over the camp and campers quickly file out of the mess hall. Chiron and Dionysus remain, sitting pensively. Chiron. Uzumaki should not be allowed near the campers, Dionysus finally speaks up. I agree, but neither of us can stop him. Dionysus, he could raise this camp, every camper, and half of Olympus in a single night. We cannot afford his ire. Chiron yells. I will not sit and allow that murderer to run free amongst my children. You have no choice. Dionysus growls in response and rose, knocking the table in front of the pair forward. Mark my words then. I don't care about this camp. However, if a single child of mine dies by Thatbing's hand, nothing will stop me from ending his wretched existence. Even if I have to tear through my nephews and nieces. Line break. What complete and utter nonsense. What exactly do these brats think a hero is? Naruto muses, watching from a distance as the campers trained by half-heartedly, sparing one another, climbing a rock wall, and shooting arrows at an immobile target. With a snort, he pushed himself of the side of the cabin he had been leaning against and began a trek towards the canoe lake. A single kelpie would probably be enough to eat all of the boys, Naruto snickered. They just don't make heroes like they used to. In Naruto's near 3,000 years on this plane of existence, these demigods had to be the most disappointing. The old blood had become rather weak. Naruto stood and walked towards the archery range where several hunters, specifically a certain deadly flower, were practicing. With a quiet grace, he slid behind Zoe like a shadow and slid one hand around Zoe's waist and the other towards her hand that grasped her bow tightly and slightly straightened her elbow and evened out her rear shoulder. Her body immediately relaxed to his touch. Form is everything, flower. Thought I'd told you that often enough to memorize it even after I left, he chuckled lightly in her ear. At his words, she tensed and pushed him away with her free hand. Perhaps you shouldn't have left, she replied, a mixture of pain and anger evident in her voice. Naruto sighed and ran his hand through the back of his hair agitatedly. The other huntresses took notice of his presence and rapidly left. Several campers looked on in interest. It was for the best, Zoe. I was only going to tear you away, Naruto began. Spare me your martyrdom, Naruto. You know my feelings for you. You know it hasn't changed and likely never will, yet you continue to draw close to me, to caress me, and make my heart stutter. You are cruel, hardened by your hunt, tears shone slightly in her eyes, making Naruto's heart ache in a way he'd almost forgotten. Damn her. And damn my feelings for her. Try as he might, Naruto knew he couldn't let go of her. Not now that he finally had her back. And we just take what we can get. Well, we can. Naruto asked, almost begged. I threw my heart to you. I would have given up the hunt, immortality, my familia for you, and after rejecting it, you think you can appear out of the snow one day, give an explanation worthy of Heracles, and expect me to risk my heart again. Her voice steadily rose, fury filling her, and she reached for an arrow nearby and knocked it, taking aim at him. With a roar, she loosed an arrow at him. With an eruption of flames, he disappears from view. His voice sounds from behind her. Everything I ever did, I did for you. The air seemed to vibrate from his words. Zoe's form began shaking, and the sound of water droplets hitting the earth seems to echo in Naruto's ears for what feels like an eternity. Leave, Naruto. I can't stand the sight of you. And with that, his heart shattered. And all his feelings were replaced by guilt, which quickly turned into an inferno. The air rapidly heated, causing distortions in the air and lighting fire to one of the nearby hay bales that had a target painted on it. Still, Zoe refused to turn, and the echoing sound of tears crashing down continued. Suddenly, the heat stopped, replaced with an icy coldness. With a snort of derision, Naruto turned and walked towards the nearby forest, disappearing into the treeline. 3,000 years later, and it still seems all I'm good at is making suffer for my actions, he laughed at himself. It was funny to consider just how little things changed despite how much he himself had. Konoha. That world's gone, Naruto, he mentally berated himself. Walking silently, he found himself looking out towards the horizon of Long Island Sound. Once again, rage built up within the pit of his stomach, white-hot as a yell that shook the heavens, light engulfed him and seared out, shooting out into the distance. The seawater instantly evaporates, causing heavy amounts of steam to rise up in an enormous cloud, blanketing the area. Clapping sounds off to his side. Damn, kiddo, you really have gotten strong. Familiar blonde hair and blue eyes that he saw in a mirror every morning greets his vision. Father. To what do I owe the displeasure? With a grimace, Naruto meets his gaze. Apollo's look of pain matches his, and his hand reaches towards the back of his head and runs through his hair in another familiar way. Well, we never did get to catch up. I'm pretty sure I was clear on my feelings towards that, Naruto bitingly replied. Naruto. Despite who and what I am, I also am your father. You cannot deny that. Apollo drew himself together and solidly met Naruto's eyes. You cannot ignore it forever. You run from so much still, little maelstrom. Pretty soon, you're going to find it all nipping at your heels. Is that one of your premonitions, father? Naruto scoffed. After all. Not even death can hold me. I'm far from concerned about a few loose ends. Yeah, you really are your mother's son. Brash, wild, and filled with untamed power, with flames that sear through reality itself, Apollo said wistfully, absently fingering leather twine around his neck. Don't you dare speak of my mother. Not after you abandoned her. Not after. Naruto trailed off, his eyes glinting with fury. You're still the same naive little brat who's more bark than bite. You realize that you once again have precious people you have to protect. Your heart is bare, Naruto. You know the prophecy regarding you, his father of an all too bright disposition chided. Right. It always boils down to prophecy. Whatever. It's inevitable anyway, why bother worrying about it now? Besides, I've got a contract I'm working on for your uncle right now. Don't you have ice caps to be melting? Prophecies to be shitting out? At this, Apollo snorted. Don't ever change, brat. And a bit of advice from your dear old pops. The brighter you are, the darker the shadow. With a flash of golden light, Naruto was once again alone. A little bit of peace, finally. Naruto. Gears be damned, do I get even a Seiko? That's me, resident handsome, charming, and all-powerful mercenary with a never-say-die attitude. How can I help you? He said grandly, turning around and acknowledging the figure who'd intruded. Oh, Miss Grace, out amongst those who used to be your kin. A gentle barbed quip. You're up, Pikachu. Her cheeks flare up slightly, and her brow furrows in a rather typical manner. Must be genetic. More like I'm looking to have words with a neon sign. Why is it you're always putting on a light show? She shot back. Touché. Well played. Probably because I know cute little moths like you are attracted to a hot flame. What can I do you for, Thalia? He cut the banter short and shot her a wink. Her face once again flushed, but she rapidly suppressed it. I was actually wondering why you're still here. I mean, the D'Angelos are safe, right? At this, Naruto bursts into mocking laughter. The short of it. Technicalities. Bianca is safe, sure. She's part of the prestigious Woodland Patrol, and Auntie isn't going to let anything untoward happen to her. Naiko, on the other hand, is royally fucked. This camp is a joke, and he isn't going to be safe. Naturally, a part of the contract was to make sure they'd both be well looked after. So, to fulfill the contract, it seems like I'm going to be teaching Naiko to look after himself. At insulting the camp, Thalia tensed angrily and scowled darkly at him. Now. No need to be so hostile. It's simple statistics. Your camper mortality rate is what, 1 of 5 of you living to a ripe old age. Not exactly reassuring. Thalia, more interested in satiation of her curiosity instead of blowing up at the infuriating man in front of her, held back the vitriol, threatening to spew from her lips. And who, exactly, is so interested in his well-being to hire you for such a contract? At this, Naruto's mouth turned up into a smirk and he casually tapped the side of his nose in answer. To be revealed at the contractor's leisure. At this, she sighed in mild disappointment and sat down on a rock near the water's edge. Naruto studied her as she looked out to the horizon. Admittedly, she was very cute. Her face slanted into a slight angular point, giving her a look of aristocratic beauty, and her pale complexion gave her a softness that made her quite fetching to look at. Strangely enough, looking at her, he was reminded of an old friend from long ago. It's the hair. Short, black, and kind of spiky. At least she doesn't have a chronic case of pink eye, he snorted with mirth. So, the daughter of the king of loud noises. How's that for a gig? He joked, cutting through the silence. Tension returned to her shoulders before suddenly sagging as she released a breathe. I'm sure you've heard the stories. Yeah. But, I think hearing them from the source would be far more interesting. At this, her eyes broke from the horizon and gazed intently into his, taking him aback. Anger boiled, steaming out from her in barely contained waves. I wonder if that's how I used to look. I've been chased by monsters all the way across a country. Along the way, I picked up 2 little kids that I had to protect, which was easier said than done seeing as I was a kid myself. And after traveling from one side of the country to the next. Then, when I'm so close to salvation, I sacrifice myself and die all because my father cold assist me mother and decides to turn me into a tree instead of simply smiting the damn beasts with a bolt of lightning. Then, I'm resurrected, only to find out that one of the kids I'd for actively tried to kill the last bit of me that was still alive. And on top of that, I find out that I'm the most likely candidate to a prophecy that means the end of the world as we know it. You tell me just how this gig seems to be going, Thalia finished, breathing heavily. Her entire body trembles and her lips quiver. Tears slide down her face. Jesus, what's with pretty girls and crying around me today? Naruto came up behind her and slid his arm around her shoulders. For what it's worth, I hear more prophecies about the end of our world in a week than our pantheon has children. Hell, I was a subject of one of them and wound up ending a world myself. At this, she looked at him confused and horrified. And hey, welcome to the club, my best friend shoved a fist of lightning through my chest once. That was a real shocker. The bewildered Ravenette looked at him incredulously before her frame started shaking again. A loud laugh escapes her lips and refuses to be silenced despite her attempts. Naruto's corners of his mouth twitch upwards as well. That was the shittiest. Most awful. Absolutely terrible attempt of comforting I have ever experienced, Thalia stated finally and wiped the tears from her face. Naruto laughed, sheepishly taking a step from her. At least you're laughing, it's the small things, Miss Grace. In a world that's full of gods, monsters, and me, you've got to stop and smell the roses, he grinned charmingly. She giggled in response. Suddenly, she quietened. What did Mr. D mean when he called you a mad dog? Instantly, Naruto sobered. I kill for money because it's all I've ever known and it lets me cling to the only past, family, and semblance of happiness I have. Ah, well, we've had a couple of disagreements and he's interfered in some business of mine. Suffice to say things turned out poorly for everyone involved. Naruto replies evasively, waving his hand in a dismissive manner. But why such personal animosity? And why would a god want to kill you, but not? It just doesn't make sense, she continued, waving her hands. Not to mention, you kind of popped out of nowhere. No one at camp has ever seen or heard of you other than Chiron and Mr. D. But you're a son of Apollo, you've lived to being, like, 19, so you've obviously have had training at this. It took all of Naruto's power to restrain from collapsing in a fit of laughter. You're a total enigma. Suffice to say, I've been around a while. I've stepped on a bunch of toes. As for why I'm not a smear, let's just say it's because of necessity. Nothing you need to worry your pretty little head about, he reached out and pinched her on the shoulder. Come on, Miss Grace. I think it's time to head back to camp lest Chiron have a conniption over your virtue, Naruto jokes. With a snort, she pushes off from the rock and dusts off her jeans. One last thing. How long have you and Zoe been a thing? At this, Naruto trips and nearly falls over. That's a rather out of the blue question. Mind if I ask why you're curious? He responded carefully. Just trying to figure out my chances. She looked at him slyly. Naruto threw his head back in laughter. Come on, Stormy. That's not an answer. Did you really expect one? And blame a girl for trying. Naruto once again threw his head back in laughter. For some time, the pair were quiet as they made their way through the woods. Fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet and the sun began to dip below the treeline as time transitioned into the late afternoon. Let's see, I left the hunt just before what's known as the First World War. I'd been with them for about 3 decades, maybe a little less so. I've known Zoe for a little over a century then. Huh. Go figure, Naruto said pensively and shrugged. He kicked an errant rock out of his path, sending it deep into the woods, impacting trees along its flight. Thalia stumbled forward. No way in hell. You barely look older than me. She yelled in shock, stopping to look at him in disbelief. Believe it? How the hell are you so young looking? She gaped. Really, Thalia, the gods don't have a monopoly on immortality. You heroes literally fight an entire category of beings that don't age. Why is it so shocking that there's people out there that also don't age? Naruto looked at her in obvious amusement. So what, you're saying you're like the monsters? Thalia questioned sarcastically. Well, that's a topic of pretty heated debate, actually, Naruto said sheepishly. Personally, I think I'm more akin to people like Circe and Medea. I just happen to find my own version of immortality. Except, put me down, and this time I'm down for good, he explained. Thalia nodded, still shocked. Wait, then how old are you? Naruto brought his hands in front of him and began ticking off fingers. I've spent 3,000 years in existence. Only about 2.5 centuries on the mortal plane though. And if we divide that by 10 and do a little bit of wishful thinking, we can pretend I'm in my early 20s. Stealing a page out of Kakashi's book once again, Naruto smiled with his eyes. So you're a pedophile. This time it was Naruto's turn to gape in shock. Yeah, you're totally a pedophile. Poor Zoe. By the gods, you're a bona fide predator. What the hell? Zoe is 2,000 years old as well. Is she really? Huh. Naruto sighed in a mixture of relief and annoyance. But you were totally checking me out when we were by the beach earlier. And I'm sure a guy who's stuck being in a teenage body for eternity had a lapse in self-control and was overcome with hormones. So. Total. Pedophile. Naruto's jaw hit the floor. Quickly, he gathered himself and tried to save face. I'll have you know that I was merely observing you, trying to figure you out. Like an annoying puzzle that's stuck in front of your face. And I have no idea what you mean by lapse in self-control. Naruto said indignantly, entirely flustered. Thalia's grin widened and looked entirely too vicious, filling Naruto with dread. So you're a 3,000-year-old virgin. Naruto's face burned. His stomach dropped. The only reply he could get out was a stutter and a grunt. Is this my eternal damnation? Surely I wasn't so horrible to merit this. No. Fucking way. Naruto refused to look at her or even acknowledge her and quickly picked up the pace. How? How? Look, I grew up in a time of war, I didn't have time for any of that, I was busy constantly fighting for my life, he grumbled. Then I died when I was 16. Kinda puts a stop to sleeping with anyone. At this, Thalia paused, feeling a strange kinship with the blonde. However, this only filled her with more questions about the blonde's mysterious past. Now, if you're quite done poking fun, we're back at camp and I do believe you have to go prepare for the evening event of capture the flag. Scram, he shooed her away. Shit, I totally forgot. Hastily, she began to sprint away towards the mess hall. We'll talk later. She called out over her shoulder. Once she ran out of earshot, Naruto mumbled to himself. You wish. That was almost as bad as Bushy Brow Sensei and Lee's Ocean Jinjutsu, Naruto shook his head in exasperation. Just like a certain Uchiha, Thalia Grace had a knack for getting under his skin, it seemed. Those two have way too much in common, he mused. They had similar hair, similar pale skin, similar angular features. Suddenly a thought came to mind and he choked in laughter. Affinity for lightning, the same bloody hair, and his summons were hawks, cousins of eagles. Way too many coincidences. Mikoto, you cheeky minx. Naruto, slowly trotted into the mess hall and surveyed the group of campers who were hastily pulling on helmets and chest plates, each talking animatedly in groups. Where's that little angel? I'm the guardian. Offs being the kid in the crowd chatting with the seaweed brat brought a sharp pang of irritation to him. Talk about the last person I need to influence my brat. Would be awesome if we just, resurrected as soon as we were killed so we could keep fighting, and the spawn of the living dead ranted before the human kelp interrupted. Naiko, this is serious. Real swords. These can hurt. Wow. What a fucking buzzkill. Naiko looked predictably disappointed, making Naruto grin ruefully. Both those braits were way too much like him when he was their respective ages. Although, Naiko particularly reminded him of a certain honorable grandson. Now, kelp boy, come off your high horse a bit. Naiko here is just excited, isn't that right, kiddo? Naruto interjects, swiftly finding his way over to the pair. Percy looked at him warily, while Naiko looked absolutely ecstatic to see him. Whoa. Fire guy. You're so cool, you're like some sort of superhero. Except I've never heard of a superhero named Naruto, and you aren't any of the figures in my themagic, but you're still really cool. I'd bet that if you had a figure, your attack power would be like over 9,000. Naruto snickered as the little guy continued ranting, while Jackson regarded him with distrust. Suddenly, Chiron's hoof thundered on the pavilion floor. Heroes. You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. Blue team, Camp Half-Blood shall take the East Woods. I, as well as Naruto, will serve as referee and battlefield medic. No intentional maiming, please. All magic items are allowed. To your positions. Annabeth came and grabbed Percy by the arm, dragging him off towards the woods. Naiko stood looking after them. Better catch up, kiddo. Here, take this, try not to hurt anyone too much with it. With a bright flash, Naruto pulled a tanto from a pocket dimension out of a wreath of flames and handed it to him. Careful, it's sharp and there's only one edge on it, but it should be easier for you to swing than hunk of metal. He pulled the bronze blade from the boy's grasp. He patted Naiko on the shoulder and pushed him after Percy and boy looked back at him in shock, his face oddly blank, before it twisted into a beaming grin of ecstasy. Thanks Naruto. Naruto chuckled, looking after the kid with fondness. Old memories came to the surface and he couldn't help but smile. Blue team, follow me. Thalia's distinctive voice called. Naruto grinned and walked to stand next to Chiron, joining him and watching the campers and hunters head out towards the woods. You seem to be quite pleasant to the young boy, Chiron said, gesturing to Naiko, who was once again talking at Percy, gesturing wildly and causing Annabeth to frown in annoyance. I'm a fairly pleasant individual, Chiron, Naruto grinned sideways. Chiron shook his head mutely. Tales of your exploit says otherwise, the centaur disagreed. Mama, that's when I'm on the job. I'm a fun guy, pinky promise, the mercenary winked. This game is going to be a farce. The hunters are going to trounce them. I am afraid I must disagree with you, Uzumaki, and insist that my campers might just surprise you. They have been well trained, the centaur nodded sagely, stroking his beard. Naruto couldn't help but scoff. Oh great trainer of heroes, I'm afraid you're going to be woefully disappointed. I'll bet 10 drachmas that the hunters overwhelm your campers and win with relative ease. The hunters are a well-oiled machine and have damn near perfect teamwork that's been honed by decades of working together. Your campers are rash, prone to acts of foolishness in attempt to prove themselves. Look at who Thalia has defending the flag. Percy, Beckendorf, and Nico. Two of her strongest team members, and a greenhorn. Immediately, her team has little offensive capability other than herself and Annabeth. Annabeth's invisibility trick that she's currently attempting won't work, the hunters likely have traps made all throughout the vicinity of their flag, and each has incredible hearing. They'll immediately detect her approaching. Predictably, Thalia sent a small group out on the leftmost flank, attempting to draw several hunters away and hopefully leave the flag less guarded. A sound enough strategy. Then, her and another group charged in, directly taking on the hunters, attempting to rush the flag. Thalia's group is pinned. The diversion isn't working. I'll bet any second now, Percy is going to dart across the river towards the hunter's flag, and that'll be when Zoe strikes. Naruto observes. True enough, Percy crossed the river and made his way towards the opposing flag. Immediately, a rain of debilitating arrows shot out, pinning Beckendorf and Nico. Zoe and two hunters ran out from behind the trees, and Zoe quickly snatched the camper's flag and made her way back across the river unopposed. It was a decisive and all too predictable victory. The hunters win. Chiron announced blandly. Then, under his breath, for the 56th time in a row. Naruto hid a grin behind a hand he brought up to scratch his nose. Perseus Jackson. Thalia screeched, storming towards Percy. Covered in sweat and smelling particularly foul, blue sparks flickered from her armor from her rage. Several campers backed away from her fury. What in the immortals were you thinking? I was at their base. But no, the flag was gone. If you'd stayed where you belonged, we would have won. She bellowed. You had too many hunters on you. Oh, so it's my fault. She yelled indignantly. I didn't say that. Oh Jackson, you poor dumb fool. Naruto shook his head in bemusement. Arg. She roughly shoved him in anger, blasting him unintentionally with a shock that sent him careening into the water a distance away. He stood angrily and hurled a jet of water that smacked into her, sending her to the ground below. Both stood, breathing heavily. Thalia brandished her spear. Several of the hunters were openly stifling laughter. You want some, seaweed brain? Naruto turned slightly to Chiron, shouldn't you step in? The centaur continued to gape in shock. Naruto shook his head. Bring it, Pinocone face. Naruto sighed and readied himself. Thalia screamed in righteous fury, stabbing her spear towards Percy, sending a bolt of lightning hurling at him as Percy hurled hundreds of gallons of water at the girl. In a flash of flame, Naruto appeared between the two, raising a jet of flame at the water, evaporating it instantly, and cut through the lightning with a slash of a strange-looking sword that had materialized in his hand. Seems like things have gotten a little heated, Naruto said, all traces of amusement absent from his voice. Why don't you two go sit down and cool off and remember how to be the leaders the two of you are supposed to be? Thalia's face burned in embarrassment and she indignantly looked away from the blonde man while Percy snorted in contempt. The shuffling of leaves and rustling came from the bushes behind Thalia and a figure pushed its way into view, causing many of the ensemble to gasp, hunters and campers alike. This is impossible, Chiron muttered nervously. She's never left the attic. Never. The withered mummy in which the oracle's spirit resided shuffled to the center of the group. Green mist spread across the earth, turning the snow a putrid green. Suddenly, her voice hissed out. I am the spirit of Delphi. Speaker of prophecies of Phobos Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. The spirit turned and paused, facing towards Naruto, regarding him. Then she turned to Zoe. Approach and ask, child of the ancient. Zoe gulped nervously. What must I do to help my lady? She asked clearly. A green mist spewed forth, creating a vague image. The oracle then spoke. 7 shall go west to the goddess in chains. The son of the true sun will fight enemies thought slain. The bane of Olympus shows the trail. Campers and hunters, combined, prevail. The Titan's curse, one must withstand. And one's parent shall perish by shadow's hand. Death shall come to claim its due. And past love shall be revived, yet tragedy ensue. The green mist coiled and retreated back into the mummy's maw. The oracle collapsed and stilled, as if she hadn't moved in eons. Silence permeated the forest. Just to be clear, I am not going to be the one to carry that rotted corpse, Naruto stated clearly. Spirit my ass, that's just another word for ghost, he shivered. Slayer of the mightiest of monsters he may be, but if you can't stab it, Naruto doesn't fuck with it. Perfectly reasonable, Mr. Uzumaki. I think Percy and Annabeth would be quite alright with taking our dear oracle back to where she belongs, Chiron gestured, obviously attempting to use Annabeth to calm down Barnacle Boy. Annabeth nodded, before leaning over and whispering in Percy's ear. Percy briefly flushed, before nodding and following her lead resolutely. Zoe continued to stand quietly and unsure, while the rest of the campers dispersed. Thalia had fled during the commotion following the end of the oracle's prophecy, likely back to her cabin to calm down. Soon, Naruto and Zoe were alone in the clearing. Naruto slid in beside her, bumping her gently with his shoulder. "No rest for the wicked, huh?" he joked. She took a deep breath and shakily released it. "You're the son of the true son, no doubt," she murmured. Naruto hummed affirmatively. "Yup," he said, popping the pea loudly. "Looks like you aren't getting rid of me," he chortled. She tensed, her eyes downturned. She trembled, deep in thought. "Look, flower. No matter how much you think on it, you aren't going to figure out exactly what the prophecy means until it happens, so there's no use in worrying. We're going to go save Auntie, and we're all going to be fine. After all, you've got me, a real hero," he said, grinning at her winningly, shutting his eyes and stretching his smile wide. She laughed softly, shaking her head at his antics, but appreciating his words nonetheless. A sad and comfortable silence, simply being in one another's presence, just like old times. Naruto sighed content, relaxing next to her. Suddenly, she grabbed the sleeve of his burnt orange hoodie, pulling him to face her. Her lips pressed against his, and the scent of wildflowers overwhelmed him, as did a sweet taste on his lips. His heart stops and skips as a mixture of emotions flood through him. It ends as abruptly as it began. She looked at him hard, and Naruto felt himself sink into her cold eyes. "I still love you, Naruto. But I also hate that I love you." With that, she fled into the night, presumably back to Artemis's cabin. Naruto spent several hours rooted in the spot she left him. Apparently the overglorified frat boy god decided that a council of all the cabin leaders and hunters must be held to discuss the prophecy, specifically without Naruto. Naturally, Naruto showed up anyway, much to Dionysus's consternation. Luckily, Chiron's presence kept the peace between the two. Through this, Naruto found himself standing in a corner, regarding a box of crackers he was eating with far more interest than any of the proceedings. Chiron sat in a wheelchair, which magically contained his horse's ass in a nifty pocket dimension, which greatly intrigued Naruto. It was definitely something a certain pop idol should look into owning. "I'm sure Chiron wouldn't mind too much if I nicked it, it's for a good cause. Sometimes, too much booty is whack." Zoe and Bianca sat at the table opposite from Chiron and Dionysus, while Thalia, Grover, and Percy sat along the right. Beckendorf, a daughter of Aphrodite, and two twins of Hermes sat on the left. No Ares kids, coincidentally. Apparently, they had insulted the hunters pretty nastily, and therefore the hunters saw fit to put the majority of them out of commission for a while. The hunters could be pretty petty. Then, his darling Zoe decided to start the meeting just how he knew she would. "This is pointless. Cheese whiz." The satyr boy gasped and began spraying the glorious pressurized cheese on crackers and ping pong balls. "What the fuck? Is he actually eating ping pong balls?" Naruto's eyebrows disappeared into his hairline as he looked on in morbid fascination. "There is no time for talk," his poisonous little flower began. "My lady needs to be rescued. The hunters and I will be leaving immediately." "Where will you be going?" Chiron asked diplomatically. "West," Bianca said. "Oh, the kiddos grow up so fast. Wait. Technically she's like 70. Is that still fast?" Naruto mused. Bianca had braided her hair and obviously was attempting to imitate Zoe. As much as he cared for Zoe, he really hoped she grew out of it quick. One of her was quite enough. The prophecy said west, right? We can have 6 hunters go. "Yes," Zoe nodded. "We will save Artemis, as is our duty." Thunder's little blunder interjected. "You're forgetting that the prophecy said campers and hunters combined prevail. We have to do this together." "No. Thy will only slow us down. We shall go, and Naruto will come. He shall be sufficient to play the role of camper," Zoe said, raising her hand. "Your people don't say the nightshade. This isn't Shakespeare," Thalia corrected. Naruto chose then to interrupt. "Zoe, darling, you know as well as I that I have never stepped foot in Camp Half-Blood prior to the day before yesterday. I'm in no way a camper. Quit being foolish. Prophecies may be bullshit, but they have rules and a way for making sure they get fulfilled. Let's not turn this into a convoluted mess." Zoe looked at him furiously, betrayal all too evidently etched on her face. "Or do they?" Dionysus mused, absently swirling his drink under his nose. "Death shall come to claim its due, and past love shall be revived, yet tragedy ensue." Sounds particularly nasty, does it not? What if they fail because they try to cooperate? Uzumaki does happen to have a habit of causing unnecessary casualties around him. Naruto shrugged in response. Hey, he never claimed to be a team player. He was born and raised as a living army killer. Regardless of your musings, with respect, Dionysus, the prophecy is very clear on this being a united effort. Chiron said pointedly, with a mild hint of annoyance that was quite uncharacteristic of him. "Sorry, my dear centaur, I'm just throwing in a bit of divinusdom." Naruto barked out a laugh at this, startling the group, making them all look at him with curiosity. In response, he waved them to continue. "Nothing good ever happens when you fight against a prophecy," Thalia remarked darkly. The room's tension became palpable, and Zoe grimaced. Even Naruto frowned at that. Percy broke the silence. 3 and 3. That way it's even. If Uzumaki really is coming along. Zoe grudgingly nodded and looked to Naruto, who also nodded in acceptance. But what about the monster? Annabeth questioned, her lips pointed in a thoughtful pout. Bane of Olympus. What is it? Chiron pursed his lips. There are several possibilities. Typhon, for instance, could be considered the Bane of Olympus. Or the sea monster Keto. But if either of those were stirring, the catastrophe would be monumental and the entire world would know. I fear this monster is more elusive. Possibly of even greater power. Naruto scoffed. Typhon is locked up tight. I made sure of that. Keto is probably still reforming in Tartarus. Don't scare the children, Chiron. Perhaps, Dionysus interrupted, and I hate to be the one to point out the elephant in the room, but maybe the Bane of Olympus is already present with us. The room's temperature dropped several degrees as Naruto's eyes shadowed, and the others regarded him with apprehension. Once again, he shrugged. Don't look at me. I haven't got a clue where Auntie might be, he drawled, not refuting Dionysus's accusation. Zoe looked at Dionysus with unimpressed disdain, while the young half-bloods regarded Naruto with obvious curiosity. Anyway, technically there's 3 potential Banes of Olympus here, so don't point fingers so quickly, ma. Moving on, Chiron hastily interrupted, we must decide on who shall be leaving on this quest. We must act hastily, Artemis's presence at the solstice is critical for preparations against Chronos' army. This quickly diverted the young demigod's attention back to the matter at hand. Dionysus continued to glare at Naruto, who merely returned a mocking grin in response. I'm going, Thalia announced. Naruto shook his head in amusement and rested a hand on Zoe's shoulder when she attempted to object. They continued around the room, waiting for volunteers. Eyes stopped on Percy. What? He asked, unnerved by the attention. Thalia responded carefully. Shouldn't you be jumping to volunteer? Percy was silent for a second, thoughtfully rubbing his chin. Honestly, I've been pretty busy lately as it is. Between retrieving the Master Bolt my first year, the Golden Fleece last year, and retrieving Nico and Bianca, I'm kinda looking forward to a break. You know, give someone else a chance, he shrugged. Thalia looked at him incredulously. Who are you, and what have you done with Kelp Boy? Percy scowled in response. What have you, daughter of Aphrodite? Zoe questioned. The girl in question blushed and frantically shook her head. Don't look at me. The child of Aphrodite who doesn't want to be looked at. What would thy mother say? Zoe mocked in amusement. Ah, what a sexy conniving bitch. You've been trying to get one boy in particular to look at you the entire time you've been here, she retorted hotly. What would your mister say? Zoe growled in response, her face flushed down to her neck, causing Thalia to openly laugh. Zoe angrily whipped towards her. Thou dares to laugh. Don't think I haven't noticed you following after him like a love-struck little girl. She shot furiously, instantly clamming Thalia up. Thalia's face did the most remarkable thing of rapidly turning pale as a sheet, then bursting into being as ripe as a strawberry. Naruto quietly looked on, barely containing his glee. Uzumaki's penchant for drawing attention from where he shouldn't aside, Dionysus drawled, lazily thumping his glass down in obvious boredom, we do need to figure out who's going on this fool's errand. And I've decided. Peter Johnson is going, I can hardly stand having him around, and getting both him and Graceless out of my hair sounds positively heavenly. Annabeth shall go as well, to make sure they don't kill one another. Percy groaned in response, and Annabeth's head thumped into the table. Thalia looked like she'd explode any second. Fine. Bianca and Phoebe will be joining us. That completes the 7, Zoe finished, ready to be done with the meeting. Hang on, one of the Hermes twins interjected, is Phoebe the one who likes to hit people in the head? The one who put arrows in my helmet? The other intoned. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Yes, why? Zoe irritatedly replied. No reason, one of them spoke, before reaching into his bag, we just have this shirt for her. The shirt burst into flames, and Naruto scared disapprovingly. As much as I appreciate a good prank, this isn't the time, boyo, Naruto said to the twin, whose face was pale as a sheet as he looked at the empty space where the shirt had been previously. Zoe looked at the pair furiously, before deciding they weren't worth her time, and stormed out, with Bianca following close behind her, who looked at the brothers with contempt. Well. That was positively interesting. On that note, I shall be leaving, Dionysus stood, giving Naruto one last look of disgust, who responded by giving him the finger. He disappeared up the stairs. Chiron coughed. Now you 3, I expect you all to behave and cooperate with the hunters. This quest seems particularly dangerous, and whatever deaths do happens to be cannot be good. Had Naruto not been going along, I myself would have joined this quest. Get plenty of rest. I fear it shall be a while before the next time any of you will be able to again. He, too rapidly left, likely to contemplate over the prophecy and formulate whatever needed contingencies. Soon, only Naruto, Percy, Annabeth and Thalia were left in the room. The trio sat looking at each other, worrying about the future. With a sigh, Naruto pushed off from his place against the wall and whipped a chair around and straddled it. "Alright kiddos. You're stressed. That isn't going to fly on a quest like this, so let's air it out. Talk to Papa Naruto," he joked, leaning in and making relaxed eye contact with each of the three demigods. Percy looked at him in annoyance. "Look, I don't know you, and I sure as hell don't trust you. So why don't you buzz off and go light some candles or something?" Kelp Breath's unlucky sperm cell cut in. Naruto chuckled in response. "Percy, shut up. Naruto has far more experience fighting monsters than anyone at this camp. Bolts, straight to the rescue. What a dear." "Whatever, tree girl, you're just fangirling over the ground he walks on," he rudely shot back. "Percy, she's right," Chiron and Dionysus even acknowledged him as being a capable individual. "We should listen to what he says," Annabeth said. Percy shook his head. "They said he was dangerous. I don't know about you guys, but that makes me trust him even less." Naruto openly laughed at that. "Did they really? No matter. Anyway, yeah, dangerous is one word for me. But I'm damn good at what I do and I'd rather we all be on good terms so there isn't any friction in the group. So, I'll just say this. If I tell you to do something, you do it. If Zoe tells you to do something, you do it. If it looks like we are about to die and I tell you to run, you run. And you don't look back." Naruto looked to the side, his eyes darkened, and the dim light of the room accentuate the shadows under his eyes. "I was once like you, Percy. I wanted to protect my friends. I wanted to prove myself." Naruto looked up and his eyes pierced Jackson to his core. "That attitude got everyone I loved killed. Learn from the mistakes of those who came before you. Don't be a foolish brat because you have a power given to you by your father. You can't afford to be foolish until you actually have power of your own." Naruto pushed his chair in and left the boy to his thoughts. He walked down to the cabins and spent some time sitting next to the campfire in the center, which he knew to be Hescha's hearth. He hummed softly to himself, clearing his mind. The stars shone brightly above, twinkling occasionally. He stared deep into the flames, watching them flicker and dance in the night, casting shadows that seemed alive. "I really let loose on the little crustacean. Gotta tone back a bit. I blame Zoe, being around her has me all riled up." Naruto snorted at himself. "Dumb kid. I swear, it's like looking in a mirror. Getting into dumb situations with a smart girl at my side ready to pull me out and tell me I'm being an idiot. I just hope he learns before it's too late." Lost in thoughts, Naruto is startled by a sudden cough that sounds next to him. "Do you mind if I sit next to you?" Thalia asked. Naruto shook his head. "I'm actually about to leave." Would it be alright if I went with you then?" She stammered, nervously shifting her weight repeatedly. Naruto briefly mulled it over. "Why?" She swallowed and spoke softly. "My, cabin is fairly empty. And honestly, I haven't really been sleeping well," she hesitantly explained. Naruto shrugged in response. "Sure, Sparks." He stood and pulled her to her feet. "Hold on tight." He held her close and with a flash of flame, it became almost unbearably hot and the wind rushed from her lungs as she felt her body be yanked through what could only be described as folded space. With a gasp, she stumbled forward across the wooden floor of an apartment towards a large window with a perfect view of the Empire State Building. A black leather couch sat in the middle of the room on what looked like a bearskin rug and a glass coffee table rested in front of it. A large TV was mounted on the wall further in front and a picture frame of a blonde-haired boy standing between a grumpy-looking ravenet boy and smiling pink-haired girl who were wrapped in the embrace of a silver-haired, masked man was hung next to it. The walls were mostly bare other than a shelf where two potted plants rested. A hallway led back towards a bedroom and likely a bathroom and opposite was a kitchen. It was small, quaint, but oddly fitting for the man behind her. "Bedroom is back there. I'll be here on the couch." Naruto threw himself back onto the couch and reclined gracefully. He reached for a remote and clicked the TV on to some anime starring a boy with orange hair and an incredibly large sword. Thalia lingered and made her way next to him on the couch, causing him to sit up and regard her curiously. "I wanted to talk to you about what you said. About there being 3 Banes of Olympus, technically there was 5 in the general vicinity." Naruto thought and sighed and rubbed the back of his head awkwardly. "I know you know about the Great Prophecy. And right now I'm the most likely candidate." "Look, Thalia, prophecies are obscure. I know that." She sharply spoke. Then she took a deep breath and settled down. "I know that. But still. I'm the oldest child of an elder god. The time of the Great Prophecy could be right now. My choice that could raise Olympus could be on this quest. Who knows how old I am with the time I spent as a tree." "Thalia, the prophecy could mean Percy. Or someone else," Naruto said hesitantly. Thalia gave him a doubtful look. "Naruto, I'm the daughter of Zeus. Based on everything we know about Greek mythology, that means I'm probably the one who's going to have the most fucked up garbage thrown their way. Naruto snorted and nodded. They made eye contact and started laughing. Look, Leah, all things considered, technically you're 22. You already passed the 16-year-old mark and we both know how particular prophecies are. No worries, and besides, you have people who love you and stand with you. Annabeth, Percy, Chiron, hell, even me. Each of us are going to stand there with you when you make your choice, and whatever choice you make, I know it'll be what you think is best for all of us. You aren't the type to sit and watch your friends be hurt, Leah. If it's you the prophecy refers to, I'm sure we'll be okay. If it's a qua boy, we're fucked though. He'll probably kill us all if it means saving a fish, Naruto jokes. Leah looks at him and chuckles quietly. Slowly, tears collect in her eyes, and her soft chuckles transforms into loud honest laughter. Relief floods through her, and a bright smile finds its way onto her face. Her eyes glisten and twinkly, looking like an afternoon sky with stars shining through the daylight. Naruto joins her in laughing and drapes an arm over her shoulder. Minutes tick by, and the pair continue to without a care in the world, their fears of the future sated and simply enjoyed being in the other's presence. Naruto turned to her with a sly grin. Anyway, screw this prophecy stuff, I hear you've been chasing after a boy. Should I be jealous? He prodded her, making her snicker. She rolled her eyes. Nah, he's a bit of a hothead with an ego that rivals my dad, he isn't anything special, she snipes with a smirk. Naruto gasped and held a hand over his heart, wounded. How dare. I'll have you know that my ego surpasses the divine battery. Leah snorts in response. I'm not sure how, he actually can get some action, Mr. 3 Millennia Virgin. Naruto's face flushes and he scowls at her. I never should have told you that. Nope. Leah grinned at him, reveling in making the ancient being next to her squirm. The pair sat for a while, Leah leaning against him on the couch. As the comfortable silence continued between the two with the TV playing in the background, Naruto became increasingly aware of their proximity. Leah shifted slightly and turned her face, looking at Naruto with a foreign look he didn't recognize. Before he realized it, her lips were pressed against his, one of her hands pressed against his chest, the other rested against his shoulder. Naruto's hands found themselves resting on her waist and himself leaning into the kiss, enjoying the feel of her pressed against him. One of his hands crept up her back, tracing along her spine, causing her back to arch and her to release an involuntary moan. Suddenly, Naruto was pulled to his senses and the situation he was in came to his realization. He broke the kiss, pulling back slightly, and rested a single finger against her lip. Leah. This isn't right and can't be happening right now, he said softly, peering into her clouded eyes. The fog cleared as she, too, came to her senses. Sorry, she said quietly. Naruto shook his head. Don't be. It was nice and you're a very beautiful girl. It's just complicated. Leah shook her head and pushed away from him, causing a lump to form in his chest. That real? I know you have feelings for Zoe. Everyone does. She's beautiful. She's strong. She doesn't need anyone else, she said bitterly. Naruto grabbed her wrist and tugged her back towards him. Leah. You're far from weak, yourself. You're just young. Inexperienced. At that, she glared at him. For an old man, you're an idiot. Naruto winced and attempted to backtrack. I'm just saying you haven't really had a chance to live yet, you know. Hey, you're very pretty, hell, I've met Aphrodite and you could totally give her a run for her money. It's not you, really, I'm. She snorted and caught his words and sealed them from being uttered with a kiss, effectively cutting him off. She lay against him once again and closed her eyes. I didn't expect you to drop everything and tell me you love me, Naruto. She yawned cutely, her lips forming an O, and her chest rose, before she let out a young breath. I'm not quite in love with you yet, myself. I just wanted to make sure you knew I'm here and that I want you, too. Naruto sat in silence, merely comprehending her words and being unable to formulate a response. She spoke for the last time that night. Let's just go to sleep. We do start the quest tomorrow. Still, Naruto sat, processing everything that had happened that night. He looked at her pale face, his eyes traced her jawline that slanted to a slight point. Her face looked serene, totally relaxed and absent of the scowl that frequented her face. She really was a very beautiful girl. Naruto felt a strange longing in his heart. A longing he knew. A longing for more. A longing for a future, together with someone who cared for him. It felt like hours before he was finally able to sleep. Line break. The morning sunlight blazed through his window, scorching into his closed eyelids. Naruto's yes wrenched open to a curtain of black hair in front of him and the smell of pine and another sweet fragrance. The light of the sun seemed to glare at him accusingly. Naruto rolled his eyes and flipped a finger towards the rising sun. The sun seemed to show more harshly, causing Naruto to shield his eyes in discomfort. The cloud drifted in front of the sun and Naruto's eyes trailed towards his newly acquired and hopefully temporary roommate. A jumble of emotions rolled through him before he settled on looking at her fondly. The back of his hand gently traced down her cheek and came to a rest on his shoulder. He gently shook her awake. With a soft groan, her eyelids fluttered and Thalia's eyes were greeted to the sight of Naruto peering down at her, a soft smile on his face. "Good morning," she smiled back. She shifted into sitting up, stretching her arms up and wide and pushing her chest out as she took a deep breath. She took a slight sniff and her nose wrinkled in disgust. "Oh wow, I smell awful. Sorry, I didn't change after capture the flag," she apologized. "No worries," Naruto shrugged off his orange hoodie, revealing a plain black tight-fitting shirt underneath. He handed his hoodie to her. "You can give it back once we get back to camp," he offered. Graciously, she accepted. "Do you mind if I go take a shower real quick?" "Help yourself, towels are in the cabinet behind the door," he gestured off. Naruto went back to his bedroom and grabbed a backpack full of essentials. As Thalia showered, he broke into his fridge and fried some eggs and bacon. He set 2 glasses down on the table in his kitchen and made a plate for each of them. By the time he'd finished, she was out and a towel was wrapped around her head, giving her quite the interesting look, causing Naruto to snicker. Thalia looked at him confused before grinning. She stuck one hip out, resting her hand on it and tossed her head to the side. "Am I sexy?" she asked with a coy grin. "Positively ravishing," Naruto snorted. "Was that Japanese?" Thalia jokes. "French, I think," Naruto quipped in response. The pair broke out into laughter and ate, shooting jokes back and forth the whole while. For Naruto, it was refreshing to have such light-hearted company. Talking with Thalia came as naturally as breathing for him. "Shit, we need to go, Leah. I'll take us directly to your cabin," Naruto said after checking the time. He grabbed his bag and took her hand and once again the pair were enveloped in a wreath of flame. Thalia's hand jerked from his own as she tumbled forward, groaning in discomfort. "I'll never get used to that," she whined, rubbing her stomach in discomfort. Naruto chuckled. "Bet packed, I'll meet you at the big house." She blew him a cheeky kiss in response. Naruto shook his head in bemusement and waved as he walked off. With a slight odd skip in his step, he walked up the hill. Several campers who were awake and about early regarded him warily, confused by his strangely good mood. At the top of the hill, out front of the big house, Percy, Annabeth, Zoe, Bianca and Phoebe were already waiting. A silver minivan was parked and Argus, the hundred-eyed man, and Chiron stood patiently, talking to the group. Naruto walked up and waved in greeting. "You're late, Uzumaki," Zoe growled. "Oof, someone's cranky," Naruto mused. "A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around. And then, if that wasn't inconvenient enough, this sweet old lady needed help crossing the street. Unfortunately, I had to cross under a ladder to help her, so I had to retrace my steps and take an entirely different path to get here." Silence encompassed the group. Percy rubbed his chin and thought. "That does sound rather inconvenient. I wonder what a ladder was doing in the middle of a street." Annabeth groaned in disbelief. "Seaweed brain, don't tell me that nickname became a real thing." Annabeth deadpanned. Naruto broke out in laughter and walked over to the car, checking it out. He checked himself out in the reflection of the side mirror and began adjusting his spiky head of hair. "Hey guys, sorry I'm late. I forgot to pack last night." "Thalia. There you are. I knocked on your cabin but you didn't answer, you must have." Suddenly Annabeth cut herself off. Total silence encompassed the hill. You could hear a pin drop despite the rustling of leaves in the wind. Naruto nonchalantly continued playing with his hair before noticing the silence and turning around with a raised eyebrow. Annabeth stood, 2 hands covering her mouth and her face beet red. Zoe looked ready to murder while Chiron looked horrified. Bianca and Phoebe both had a look of disgust and Percy looked confused. Suddenly, realization dawned on Percy as he looked at Thalia. Thalia hadn't been in her cabin this morning. Naruto was late. Thalia was late. Thalia currently stood, wearing cut-up jeans, combat boots, and one distinctly new, but entirely too recognizable thing, with an all-too-proud smirk of victory on her face. Naruto's heart filled with dread at the ensuing shitstorm he knew was coming. Thalia hadn't changed out of the burnt orange hoodie he had loaned her. Zoe took a sharp breath and gave Thalia a look of utter loathing and refused to acknowledge Naruto. She turned towards the car. "I shall be driving." "Phoebe shall ride shotgun if possible." Naruto felt himself pale further, but wisely chose not to object. He climbed into the back seat and grabbed a window seat. Thalia squeezed into the middle seat beside him and Annabeth sat next to her, leaving Percy and Bianca between them and Zoe. Zoe roughly twisted the ignition and the car purred to life. She yanked the car into drive and her foot hit the gas pedal like lead, jerking the car forward. "Was that really necessary?" Naruto murmured to Thalia. She grinned at him in response and nodded affirmatively. The ride continued in awkward silence, with everyone in the car looking distinctly uncomfortable, other than Thalia, who looked all too proud. Cars began zipping by as they drove on the highway. Zoe didn't dip below 100 miles per hour the entire time. "Where are we going?" Percy asked, hoping to break the silence. "Washington, D.C., Bianca replied. "Phoebe used a bit of woodland magic before we left and learned there's a strong force there that might be the Lady Artemis." Percy nodded and the silence resumed. Naruto was almost safe. He almost was able to live this entire situation down. But, once again, leave it to a child of Athena to muck things up in their pursuit of knowledge. In a poor attempt of discretion and a whispered voice that did little to obscure itself from the rest of the group's hearing in the compact environment of the minivan, Annabeth asked Thalia a question that would damn Naruto. "So Thalia, can I ask you a question?" "For sure, Annie, ask away." "What was having sex like with Naruto? Sometimes I really hate having been brought back." Line break. How the hell they made it to DC boggles Naruto. Zoe didn't let the dial dip below 120. After Annabeth's supposedly innocuous question that was entirely too harmful and dangerous for Naruto's self-preservation, Zoe completely lost her cool, to the point where the veins in her forehead looked like they would burst. For the first time in a long while, Naruto was fairly certain he was going to die. Painfully. And after spending 2 millennia roaming Tartarus, it was a hell of a wake-up call to know that a girl stuck in the body of a teenager could terrify him. When the car finally stopped outside of a gas station, Naruto practically ripped open the door to feel concrete beneath his feet. He stood just outside the door, resting his hands on his knees bent over, gasping for breath. Percy quietly snickered, despite he himself being reminiscent of paper, as he climbed out behind the strange blonde. "Immortales, I really thought that was it," Naruto gasped, his legs trembling slightly. With a dramatic gesture, he flamboyantly brushed away a non-existent bead of sweat and laid the back of his hand on his forehead. He leaned against the side of the car. Zoe had begun to fill up gas on the other side. Naruto glanced up and noticed Percy looking at him. "What's up, Aquaboy?" Percy snorted. "I'm just trying to figure out how someone who's supposed to be dangerous is terrified of being in a car with a teenage girl. I'll have you know that teenage girl is nearly as old as the Greek pantheon and could kick your ass," Naruto mock pouted. Percy laughed at that, shaking his head in disbelief. "Thalia actually said you're older." "I don't know if I believe her, to be honest, you act just like a kid." Naruto grinned at him in response. "Believe it, I'm ancient. I'd say just about exactly the same age as the rest of the Greek gods. Keep in mind though, there's others out there that make me look like an infant," he chuckled. Percy looked at him quizzically. "Sorry, can't say," made an oath. "Guess you've just gotta stay alive long enough to find out for yourself." Percy nodded, interestingly enough choosing not to push the issue. "I've got a question for you, though." "Shoot, Crab King." "You said back at the big house that I'm like you, and that because of that a lot of people died." Instantly, the pair sombered. Naruto looked at Percy with a haunted stare, frowning in thought. "I did. Is there a question there?" Naruto replied evasively. Zoe came around from the side of the car and walked by without a glance in their direction into the gas station, followed by Thalia, Phoebe, Bianca, and Annabeth. What did you mean? How did it get people killed?" Percy grimaced nervously. Naruto was silent for a moment, lingering with a gaze that pinned Percy in his place. "Like you, I was reckless. Strong. I'd sacrifice anything for my friends and the people who I'd formed bonds with. I was a natural leader. Just like you. When I was 16, I was the subject of a prophecy. I would either save or destroy the world," Naruto said softly. Percy looked up at him in shock, startled and confused. "What do you mean?" Naruto began laughing mirthlessly. "Just what I said. I was the child of prophecy and the savior of the world. But, when it came down to it, after the man I considered my brother, even though he tried to kill me over and over, I couldn't put my heart to the side and finish him. And because of that, my home, everything I knew and loved, was obliterated in a single instant." "But what does that have to do with me?" Percy asked. "They haven't told you then. Percy, someday soon you might have to make a decision. A big one. And if you can't kill your heart and do what needs to be done, a lot of people are going to die." Naruto grimaced and shook his head. "Look. Don't worry about it right now. We've got a goddess to save, after all." "Oh sure, don't worry Percy, you're gonna have to make a decision and tons of people might die, but don't worry." Percy said sarcastically. "Why are you even here? You're like thousands of years old. What stakes do you have in any of this?" "I don't really know. Come to think of it, my being here is rather strange. I just coincidentally happened to run into a group of demigods on a contract to protect a couple of other demigods. Then I happened to come across Zoe. And then suddenly I'm stuck in another prophecy. Talk about an odd twist of fate," Naruto mused. Percy paled and shook his head. "Please don't talk about fate around me. Old ladies are scary." Naruto openly laughed at that and placed his hand atop Percy's head, messing up his hair. You're right about that. Man, you think your old ladies are bad, lem tell you about my botchin'. Crazy old bitch was obsessed with her looks, right, and had a hell of a punch. There's someone older than you? And it's your grandma. Thalia interrupted with a wide grin. The group of girls had returned from the inside of the gas station and were carrying several plastic bags full of food. Your caustic wit never fails to amuse, Thalia, Naruto droned with a roll of his eyes, despite having a small grin tugging at the corners of his lips. Thou shall quit talking and get in the automobile, Zoe said shortly. Phoebe glanced up at the group. There's a powerful ancient presence coming from the Smithsonian. We're going to go check it out, Phoebe hesitantly spoke. Oh ho. You can talk. Naruto said with false shock. Phoebe rolled her eyes and got back in the car, followed by the rest. Naruto plopped back into his seat beside Thalia, who nudged him with a grin. I'm surprised you didn't kill Seaweed Brain. We left you two alone for a while, she smirked at him. Naruto chuckled. He's not so bad. He kind of grows on you. Yeah, like algae, Thalia snarked. Naruto nodded in agreement. Annabeth looked distinctly amused, while Percy glowered. We all get our time alone with Percy that winds up making us change our minds about him, Annabeth smiled. We actually were stuck together when we were running an errand for Ares, where we wound up against a bunch of mechanical spiders, and he wound up saving us both. Oh, I remember this story. Weren't you guys stuck in the tunnel of love? Thalia glanced at Naruto, giving him a meaningful look. Naruto quickly caught on. Oh? How risque. Percy, you charming little bastard, you move so quickly. They grow up so fast, Naruto sniffled, wiping an imaginary tear from his eye. Annabeth and Percy both flushed and pointedly looked away from each other, causing Thalia and Naruto to both snicker. Thalia turned to Naruto with a devious grin. Pretty much the opposite of you, Naruto. You move too slowly. Everyone except Naruto gave her a quizzical look. She opened her mouth to explain, but Naruto swiftly brought a hand up to cover it. That's a long and personal story, Thalia, we wouldn't want to be sharing, would you quit licking my hand? Thalia gave a pout in response, but a grin lingered on her face. Zoe grimaced at the pair, but said nothing. Line break. One glance around DC is really all you need to recognize the obvious classical influence in the architecture. How mortals hadn't realized that there was something beyond them, walking beside them was beyond Naruto. Then again, it did make sense. Mortals would do anything to remain blind to things they don't understand. Naruto snorted at his inner thoughts while he trailed behind the group of young demigods. I've been reduced to a glorified babysitter. I wonder if this is how Leto felt, poor grandma. The presence is coming from the Smithsonian of Natural History. It feels familiar, Zoe said, wariness and uncertainty creeping on her face. Ma, no worries Zoe, I'm sure everything is gonna be fine. After all, you've got me to protect you, Naruto winked, clapping her gently on the back. Thalia tensed slightly at the interaction, but otherwise remained silent. Annabeth looked at her worriedly and glared daggers at Naruto, who remained oblivious. Let's go, I'm bored, he drawled. Not every second needs to be filled with action, murderer, Phoebe snarled. Naruto snickered. No need to be so touchy, Phoebe dear. I'm just worried about dear old auntie. Phoebe reached for her bow slung across her shoulders, but Zoe raised her hand, stopping her. Bianca looked distinctly uncomfortable and regarded Naruto with a great deal of apprehension, while the demigods looked lost. Naruto rolled his eyes and gestured to Zoe to lead onward. You know, you'd think there'd be a lot more people around, Percy idly commented. Naruto frowned, suddenly noticing just how empty the Smithsonian was. Weapons in hand, Naruto commanded. Something doesn't feel right. He retrieved a simple-looking keyring from the pocket of his torn jeans and with a yank, tore free one of the keys. A large, slightly curved sword with a black blade and a golden hilt formed with a flash of golden light. The midnight blade seemed to suck in the surrounding light, its cold edge almost howled with a supernatural fury. I don't think I've ever seen a sword like that, Thalia observed, bringing her spear to a rest atop her shoulder. Naruto shot her a smirk before raising the blade to his eyes and smiling at it fondly. It's Stygian iron. The blade was a gift from Hades after a job he had me do during some time I spent in the underworld, Naruto explained. You spent time in the underworld? Percy asked curiously as the group continued through the Smithsonian of Natural History. Quite a long time. From what I hear, you have too. And, you got pretty close to my main stomping grounds, Naruto said slyly. Percy looked thoughtful and then paled. Tartarus. Tartarus, Naruto affirmed. Percy shuddered and Annabeth looked distinctly sick. Thalia seemed impressed, while Phoebe and Bianca were clueless. Zoe looked strangely sad. Nah, it's not so bad. You get used to the constant screams of pain and anguish pretty quickly, Naruto snarked in response to their odd looks. The group continued into a room full of assembled skeletons of assorted dinosaurs. In the center of the room, a large Tyrannosaurus skeleton stood. Observing it was a titan of a man wearing a brown suit with his back turned toward the party. Naruto Uzumaki. The Divine Hunter. The Bane of Ethnon. I hadn't thought we would meet again, the man's voice rumbled deeply, causing the air to vibrate. The man's presence filled the room, inspiring fear and awe in the demigods in the room. Thalia's legs shook nervously, and Percy's arms trembled, struggling to hold up a sword in his hand. A bead of sweat dripped from Naruto's forehead, and his hand tightened around his sword. And Zoe. How I am filled with nostalgia. Percy. If anything happens to me, you're in charge. Zoe. Stay behind me. Naruto shifted, bringing his blade before him, gripped in both hands. Zoe was paralyzed, staring at the back of the man, unable to do so much as nod. Damn it Zoe, snap out of it. Naruto snarled. The man chuckled, and the world seemed to tilt as he turned. Zoe let out a disbelieving gasp. The man was tall, unnaturally so, with broad shoulders and muscles that looked like he could break steel beams with a simple flex. His dark, slicked back hair was complemented by his light brown skin tone, and his eyes were cold and gray, like a cloud thick with rain. His face was brutal, yet regal, and all too familiar. Darlings, oh, you'd think you'd be happy to see your father. Then again, his face twisted with anger, after your betrayal, fearing me is wise. Percy stumbled in shock and wildly turned to Zoe. Annabeth's hands trembled and she slunk back behind Percy and slipped on her baseball cap, turning invisible. Don't do anything rash, Annie. Naruto quietly prayed. How? Zoe stammered. Your foolish goddess cannot abide seeing a child suffer. Having her take my place was a simple matter. A pair of doors to the side burst open and in strolled a sandy blonde-haired teen with a sword of celestial bronze and steel, flanked by two impausa carrying daggers, characterized by their one bronze leg. General, we have the bones and the ritual is complete, the teen interrupted himself with a curse and drew the blade on his back. The general raised his hand, halting the boy. No need, boy. Naruto will not move against us while he has these demigods with him. You always were overly sentimental, the general chortled. Better to be sentimental rather than alone, damned to a curse that no one else will bear, Naruto shot back, taking a step forward. Do not be a fool, Uzumaki. I have no intention of killing you or your friends at this moment. Naruto paused. However. It's never easy. Why can't the bad guys skip the monologue and get to the point? Naruto sighed through his nose. I wish to test this boy, the man gestured towards the sandy blonde teen who has pledged himself to my service. Who better for him to be measured against than the man who kills gods? He mocked. Naruto shook his head, having become the center of attention after that statement. Zoe's face twisted in discomfort. Show me your resolve, Luke Castellan. The newly named teenager strode forward, raising his sword with a flourish. Naruto took a step forward and a deep breath. Luke's blade struck with unnatural speed, cutting through the air towards Naruto's unprotected neck. With a quick flick, Naruto's sword intercepted it and parried it to the side. With a twist of his wrist, he brought his blade slashing downward, cutting through the air that Luke had previously occupied. Luke's blade poised to strike his side, but with a yell, Naruto summoned a blast of flames that surrounded him, creating an explosive force that sent Luke sprawling across the pavement. Naruto blurred from reality, appearing over him. His blade came down on Luke, slamming against the boy's sword that had been raised hastily in defense. Luke rolled to the side and leapt to his feet and with a grunt and a spin, stuck out with a powerful blow. Naruto parried it upward and slammed into Luke with a well-timed shoulder tackle. Naruto stood over the boy, who reached for his sword that had fallen next to him. Naruto stood on his R, pinning it to the ground, causing a scream of pain to escape the boy's lips. Naruto grinned savagely and began grinding his heel into the boy's arm. He rose his blade and prepared the finishing blow. No. Annabeth's voice screamed, grabbing his arm. His moment of hesitation cost him, and the haft of a large palm connected with his side, sending him careening into a wall. The wall cracked and crumbled under the force, as did several of Naruto's ribs. The general stood, holding Annabeth suspended in the air. You're weak, boy, the general growled. An unworthy servant. Luke snarled in defiance, cradling his arm. Take him, he gestured towards the two impausa, who brought the boy to his feet and helped him from the room. And so, once again you allow the people around you to hinder you. You will forever be weak, unable to bring the change our world needs, Uzumaki. You will fail. Again. He paused. It's a pity. When you stood in front of us at Mount Othries, my brothers and I could feel your power, your potential. Yet you allowed yourself to be chained and restrained by the gods, the very gods who failed you and left your home to be annihilated. Stand with us once again, Naruto. You are my greatest soldier. Break free from your shackles, as have I. You know me better than that. Power like mine. All it does is kill. Naruto laughed softly. Now I use it to protect kids like me. I kill the monsters that would kill them. I am content. The general regarded him with a calculating look. Oh. Take these children, live to fight another day. Consider this my last and only token of my respect to you. I will not grant you mercy the next time we meet, and make no mistake, we will meet again. Soon. He dropped Annabeth to the floor and turned once again to observe the skeleton of the Tyrannosaurus. Daughter. I will deal with you later. Zoe shivered. Let's go, Naruto said softly. Percy tried to interrupt, but Naruto shook his head. Percy. That guy could kill all of us without a sweat. We're leaving. The general continued to ignore their presence as they made a swift exit. Line break. The group reached the car and piled in. Naruto decided he would drive. Zoe rode shotgun, while the rest were piled assortedly in the back. Neither would look at the other, and Naruto drove in silence. What the hell was that? Percy asked suddenly, his hand smacking his seat. It was one guy. We could have taken him. That one guy, Jackson, is the second strongest Titan, Naruto said coldly. Percy looked unimpressed, so Naruto continued. Atlas could have collapsed the entire Smithsonian with us all inside of it in the blink of an eye. At his name, Percy's eyes widened exponentially. After all, Atlas appeared in the story of his namesake, of course he would recognize it. Atlas is your dad. Bianca turned to her leader in shock. Zoe didn't respond. Yes. Naruto said curtly. You fought for the Titans? Percy asked. Yes. The car was silent. Care to elaborate? Thalia questioned guardedly. No. Naruto responded. Zoe's hands clenched. Ashamed, Naruto? Zoe bitterly stabbed. Naruto looked at her sideways and snorted. I don't remember you complaining. And then you left again. And you had a different man you were in love with. Naruto coldly shot. Fury overtook Zoe's face. That was low, Uzumaki. Naruto rolled his eyes in response. Before stomping on the brakes and pulling over. No, Zoe. Low is telling someone you love them while simultaneously stabbing them in the back. You refuse to see reason. The Titans were running rampant, thou were killing by the thousands. Blood ran from arteries like a river, and… Enough. Naruto barked. Zoe fell silent, cowed. No one dared to speak. For a long while. The ride continued in silence before finally Annabeth spoke. Where are we going? Home. Zoe intoned dully, a stony visage had overcome her. We're going to California. Specifically, Mount Tamalpais. Naruto's hands were tied on the steering wheel and his eyes were locked on the road. Thalia reached forward to rest a hand on his shoulder, which he shrugged off. Her eyes shone with hurt and she sat back. They ran out of gas a while later and wound up having to walk to a train station. Night had fallen and it was dark and cold, so the group decided it would be best to spend the night at the station. We'll catch a train west in the morning. Get some rest. Naruto droned, sitting on a bench. The moon hung overhead, dangling in the sky, as if hung by invisible strings. He sat in solitude, a fair distance from the group who had begun setting up sleeping bags and had started a small fire in a discarded barrel. As they began settling into sleep, he delved into his own thoughts. I am a monster. I was born, raised, and forged in the fires of war and death, ablaze with an unquenchable thirst for blood. It's all I know. And the sins of my past will forever outweigh the deeds of my present and future. Who am I to think I'm a protector now after everything I've done? How many fathers, mothers, daughters and sons have I killed, all in the name of a cause? Naruto attempted to bring a painful smile to his face in an attempt to chase away the phantom nightmarish thoughts. He felt a comforting touch that wrapped around his arm and a head gently rest against his form. The scent of pine and lavender filled his nostrils. He sat unmoving, unwilling to bring his face to meet the one who'd invaded his private torture. I'm sorry. The voice of his thousand-year love sounded. I am, too. She pressed against him, her body melding to his. Naruto let out a sigh of contentment and leaned back to stare out at the stairs through the glass ceiling. Anaclosmos. Odd, seeing it again, Naruto remarked, giving Zoe a pointed look. A scowl formed on her face. Yes. 'Tis very odd that blade surfaced, especially at a time like this. The fates do love their cosmic irony, Naruto snorted, leaning slightly against Zoe. Percy is destined for greatness. Zoe was pensive for a moment. I will help him succeed where I failed. She asked hesitantly. I will guide him towards making his own decisions, he replied evasively. Zoe cringed slightly and shook her head. He will not be able to do what must be done. The boy is far too reckless, she warned. I guess he'll just have to become strong enough to protect everyone, Naruto said finally. Besides, even if he fails, both of us will remain everlasting. As we are damned to be. Our damned to be, Naruto. I can still die and likely will if my father has his way. Which he will, should Chrono succeed. Zoe reminded. Naruto inhaled sharply and shot her a mocking grin. I doubted. They spoke of you in Tartarus. Oh? After all, you led a mortal onto Mount Othries and helped him steal an apple. To gift such a man immortality, Zoe. A child of the gods. They howl your name in Tartarus. With one action, you tip the scales of war. Naruto chided. And I suffer for my foolishness every day. And do not dare. What of your infatuation with Thalia? A mortal. Who is also a child of Zeus. Yet you dare scold me? When thou art preparing to make the same mistake. Did you forget that she, too, will one day grow into a withered husk before crumbling away? Zoe rose to her feet, her tone dangerous. Naruto didn't move and looked blankly at Zoe. My heart has forever belonged to you. Since the day we met at the base of the mountain where I was broken and bloodied. Where your father's brothers had hauled me, having found me wandering the depths of Tartarus. Then why do you entertain her? Why do you allow her to take thy clothes? Why did thou lay with her, share a bed with her? Zoe seethed. Thalia suffers as I did. She's had an impossible task hoisted open her shoulders because of her parents. She understands the betrayal, the abandonment, and the need to protect the one she loves. We are one and the same. Naruto calmly explained. Yet you proclaim to love me. You're imagining far too much. Nothing of the sort that you are thinking happened, Naruto rolled his eyes. Zoe's rage subsided as she regarded him tiredly. She's falling for you, Naruto. I know. You are mine. I am. I will not share you. I'm not asking you to. But you've also stated repeatedly you hate me and want nothing to do with me. Mixed messages, Zoe-chan. Naruto grinned up at her, his fanged smile cutting through the night. She giggled in response. Naruto froze. Did you just giggle? Her anger returned full force as her fist cocked back and connected sharply with his gut. I must have imagined it, he wheezed. It is surely so. She stretched and released a long yawn. Her back arched and Naruto found his eyes tracing her generous curves appreciatively. Of course, she noticed. Thou art still a pervert, I see. You're imagining things, my favorite poison, Naruto winked. She sniggered and shook her head. She leaned in and pressed her lips to his cheek. Naruto felt a warmth flare across his cheeks. Mirth danced in Zoe's eyes. You should sleep, Naruto. It would be disastrous if thou were too tired to fight should we encounter my father once again, Zoe ordered imperiously. Naruto rolled his eyes in response but smiled at her nevertheless and nodded. I will, soon. Just need to clear my head. She yawned again and left to lay down. Soon, she too joined the rest of the teens in the realm of Morpheus. Naruto continued to be vigil, keeping the flames in the barrel from burning out. So, Atlas is running around and my dearest sister is left as his substitute. That's bad. Apollo appeared next to Naruto wearing a large trench coat and a simple pair of jeans, just as he was drifting to sleep. Naruto glared through his half-lidded eyes and sat up. It would seem so. Better hurry. Artie won't be able to hold the sky for long. Even for a god, such a task is taxing. She very well may fade, Apollo whispered. Naruto scratched the side of his face and thought. We definitely can't have that. No, we cannot. Especially not now. We need every god and goddess ready, with Atlas moving and Chronos rising, it's only a matter of time before the rest of the Titans break free from Tartarus. That's if Tartarus is even binding them anymore, mind you. Although he hates the Titans, I'm sure he hates the gods of Olympus more. Apollo lectured. Naruto nodded in agreement. Apollo reached into the inside of his coat and pulled out 7 tickets. Take these. Board the first train that comes, it should arrive just as the sun rises. You'll be in San Francisco at sunset. Apollo winked. Naruto read the ticket. Sunset Railway. Real inconspicuous. He looked up to realize he was talking to air. Huh. So that's how that feels. Line break. Oh well, isn't this precious? How vulgar. I guess seaweed brain isn't totally hopeless after all. Percy attempted to clear the blurriness of the morning with a brush of the inside of his palm, yawning heavily as he woke up to the odd tones of his companions. He opened his eyes and was greeted to the sight of the rest of the group standing over them. Naruto had a lazy smile adorning his face, while Zoe had a practiced blank expression despite obvious amusement flickering in her eyes. Thalia had a suggestive smirk. What are you? He yawned again. What are you guys on about now? His arm felt heavy, like there was an extra weight to it, but he didn't pay it any mind. He was rather comfy. The trio burst into laughter, while Bianca and Phoebe retained disgusted looks. Get up, Jackson. We're leaving. And be mindful of your companion. It'd be rude to wake her up after such a vigorous night. Naruto wiggled his eyebrows, a wide Cheshire grin bearing down on him. The gravity of his words sunk in, and with a gulp, Percy looked to his side. Annabeth yawned cutely as her eyes fluttered open. Her mouth formed an O as her eyes met Percy's and perceptibly widened. Her cheeks tinged pink and she quickly pushed herself up. Ahem. Sorry. I must have moved in my sleep, she said, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The Naruto and Thalia once again cracked up while Zoe shook her head in amusement. Anyway. I've got our tickets. We're boarding in 5, Naruto gestured towards the train that had pulled into the station, with Sunset Railway printed along the side of the train cars. Not all of us, I'm afraid, Zoe interrupted. Phoebe, I thank you, but we have no need for a tracker anymore and I refuse to risk thy life any further. You will return back to the camp with Bianca and should anything happen to me, assume charge of the hunters. Zoe commanded. Phoebe began to speak, but Zoe cut her off. Do as I order. You as well, Bianca. They both nodded in response. Right then. Anyone else wish to go back to camp? Naruto said, looking at the camp half-blood demigods. When none responded, he nodded. And then there were 5. Good. Naruto thought calculatingly. Less people meant less of a chance of someone dying. Say your goodbyes and let's go. He swiftly turned and boarded the train without a glance back. Interestingly, the train wasn't empty. Mortals were aboard with several immortals blended in, but none were observing each other, each was wrapped up in their own business. The card was empty for the 5 of them and they settled in comfortably. Naruto chose a window seat and glanced out the window out at the station. Shortly after, the other 4 joined him. Next stop, San Francisco. Naruto gingerly rubbed his ribs after Thalia plopped down next to him, accidentally jolting him from the nap he had dozed into. Across from him sat Zoe, Annabeth and Percy in their small but cozy train compartment. Percy and Annabeth were heatedly arguing about something he could care less about, while Zoe's eyes were fixed on the horizon as she anxiously fingered a leather strap with a crescent moon hanging on the end of it. Noticing his grimace of pain, Thalia prodded him again. A sharp grunt escaped his lips. You alright there, Naruto? She raised an eyebrow. The eyes of everyone in the compartment fixed upon him. His lips curled lightly. Ichi? Just a little sore. Naruto responded shortly. Zoe's eyes narrowed before a flicker of realization flashed in her eyes. She stood up and took a step towards Naruto. Remove thy jacket and shirt, Naruto. It's called a hoodie, Zoe-chan, and really, I'm fine, he grinned up at her. Percy murmured something indecipherable in Annabeth's ear. Zoe scowled, took a step closer, and wrenched his hoodie off. Geez Zoe, if you wanted me naked that badly you just had to ask, Naruto jokes. When their eyes settled on his side, Annabeth released a gasp while Zoe's frown grew more pronounced. She kneeled down closer to his side which had changed to an angry purple color, swollen and ugly. Move, girl, Zoe ordered Thalia. Thalia hastily stood and took Zoe's previous seat. Zoe's hands gently prodded his ribs, causing Naruto to wince. Zoe turned angrily to Annabeth. Foolish girl. She snarled. Annabeth was pale as a sheet and Thalia looked uncomfortable. Don't talk to Annabeth like that. Percy shouted, getting to his feet. Sit down, Percy, Naruto calmly ordered. Zoe, it isn't a big deal. I'll be fine in a couple days, he said with a smile. Naruto, had that blow been directed at your head, even you wouldn't have survived. Zoe indignantly responded. Annabeth's eyes were teared up. But it wasn't and I did, so no harm done, he said cheerily, looking at Annabeth. It's no big deal, Annie. However, Naruto paused. Luke is a traitor to the Pantheon. He's pledged his loyalty to Kronos and there isn't any coming back from that. Kronos, the deceiver, Lord of Time, doesn't let his subjects escape his grasp. Ever. He can't be redeemed. Eventually, he's going to have to die. Whether it's by my hand, Naruto glanced at Percy, or another's. Thalia shook her head but said nothing. Percy refused to meet Naruto's eyes. Luke's just confused and hurt, Annabeth said hotly. Naruto snorted. Yeah, you're just like Sakura. Hopelessly chasing after a childish crush, Naruto rolled his eyes. Mark my words, Annie, Luke's going to be the one to kill you if you don't get over him. Luke would never. Naruto coldly interrupted. He would and he will, all to further his own revenge. That's how this story is written and that's how it ends. Every single time. Annabeth's mouth opened to speak once again, but she cut herself short when she noticed Thalia quietly shaking her head at her. My godfather was a man who loved the idea of world peace. He was given a prophecy that said he would be the one to find and train the child of prophecy who would either raise the world or guide it towards everlasting peace. He had a friend, practically a brother, who hated the status quo that had taken his family from him and as a result, his friend wanted to gain power to become undefeatable. He wanted to conquer death. My godfather turned a blind eye, despite how the evidence of his friend killing and torturing the people of their village with sick experiments that defied the laws of nature. My teacher, he also had a best friend, a brother in arms. My teacher believed him dead, but in reality he was taken and bided his time, gaining power, a power he would use to raise a man and enact a plan to destroy the world that once housed the people he loved. I had Sasuke. We were cut from the same cloth. We had no family, I was an orphan, his family had been slaughtered by his older brother. We made a pact. We would never leave the other behind. Then, he decided he wasn't strong enough. He needed more power to enact his revenge against his older brother. He decided. Naruto paused here and lifted his shirt above his head, revealing a tapestry of scars. He pointed to a fist-sized hole in his chest, right where his heart should be. That by killing me, he would transcend the chains that bound him and be granted the strength he needed to end him. I survived and spent 4 years chasing him down, trying to bring him home. At the end of it, at the edge of the world that had turned to ruin from a war against a madman, we stood together. He had finally gotten his revenge against his brother. He had learned his brother had been innocent and that the fault of the death of his family rested on the shoulders of a dead man who was afraid of change. We stood together, looking onwards towards a primordial being that was tearing the fabric of our world apart, and he smiled. Sasuke turned to me and shoved his blade through my heart. His last words to me were that this world didn't deserve to exist. The death of an entire world rests on my shoulders, all because I refused to kill a man obsessed with revenge. Luke is the same. He would watch the world burn rather than let things remain how they are. So ask yourself, what means more to you? His life or the lives of everyone you know? Naruto finished. I was hoping to speak to you alone, Annie. But then again, this is a lesson that all 3 of you needed to be taught. Naruto shrugged his shirt back on and yanked his hoodie back over his head. Zoe's eyes had an insurmountable distance present in them, while Percy and Annabeth had similar horrified looks etched onto their faces. Thalia merely looked sad. Naruto gingerly rubbed his ribs after Thalia plopped down next to him, accidentally jolting him from the nap he had dozed into. Across from him sat Zoe, Annabeth and Percy in their small but cozy train compartment. Percy and Annabeth were heatedly arguing about something he could care less about, while Zoe's eyes were fixed on the horizon as she anxiously fingered a leather strap with a crescent moon hanging on the end of it. Noticing his grimace of pain, Thalia prodded him again. A sharp grunt escaped his lips. "You alright there, Naruto?" She raised an eyebrow. The eyes of everyone in the compartment fixed upon him. His lips curled lightly. "Ichi? Just a little sore." Naruto responded shortly. Zoe's eyes narrowed before a flicker of realization flashed in her eyes. She stood up and took a step towards Naruto. "Remove thy jacket and shirt, Naruto." "It's called a hoodie, Zoe-chan, and really, I'm fine," he grinned up at her. Percy murmured something indecipherable in Annabeth's ear. Zoe scowled, took a step closer, and wrenched his hoodie off. "Geez, oh, if you wanted me naked that badly you just had to ask," Naruto jokes. When their eyes settled on his side, Annabeth released a gasp, while Zoe's frown grew more pronounced. She kneeled down closer to his side, which had changed to an angry purple color, swollen and ugly. "Move, girl," Zoe ordered Thalia. Thalia hastily stood and took Zoe's previous seat. Zoe's hands gently prodded his ribs, causing Naruto to wince. Zoe turned angrily to Annabeth. "Foolish girl." She snarled. Annabeth was pale as a sheet and Thalia looked uncomfortable. "Don't talk to Annabeth like that," Percy shouted, getting to his feet. "Sit down, Percy," Naruto calmly ordered. "Zoe, it isn't a big deal. I'll be fine in a couple days," he said with a smile. "Naruto, had that blow been directed at your head, even you wouldn't have survived," Zoe indignantly responded. Annabeth's eyes were teared up. "But it wasn't and I did, so no harm done," he said cheerily, looking at Annabeth. "It's no big deal, Annie." However, Naruto paused. "Luke is a traitor to the Pantheon. He's pledged his loyalty to Kronos and there isn't any coming back from that. Kronos, the deceiver, Lord of Time, doesn't let his subjects escape his grasp. Ever. He can't be redeemed. Eventually, he's going to have to die. Whether it's by my hand." Naruto glanced at Percy or another's. Thalia shook her head but said nothing. Percy refused to meet Naruto's eyes. "Luke's just confused and hurt," Annabeth said hotly. Naruto snorted. "Yeah, you're just like Sakura. Hopelessly chasing after a childish crush." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Mark my words, Annie, Luke's going to be the one to kill you if you don't get over him." "Luke would never." Naruto coldly interrupted. "He would and he will, all to further his own revenge. That's how this story is written and that's how it ends. Every single time." Annabeth's mouth opened to speak once again, but she cut herself short when she noticed Thalia quietly shaking her head at her. "My godfather was a man who loved the idea of world peace. He was given a prophecy that said he would be the one to find and train the child of prophecy who would either raise the world or guide it towards everlasting peace. He had a friend, practically a brother, who hated the status quo that had taken his family from him and as a result, his friend wanted to gain power to become undefeatable. He wanted to conquer death. My godfather turned a blind eye, despite how the evidence of his friend killing and torturing the people of their village with sick experiments that defied the laws of nature. My teacher, he also had a best friend, a brother in arms. My teacher believed him dead, but in reality he was taken and bided his time, gaining power, a power he would use to raise a man and enact a plan to destroy the world that once housed the people he loved. I had Sasuke. We were cut from the same cloth. We had no family, I was an orphan, his family had been slaughtered by his older brother. We made a pact. We would never leave the other behind. Then, he decided he wasn't strong enough. He needed more power to enact his revenge against his older brother. He decided. Naruto paused here and lifted his shirt above his head, revealing a tapestry of scars. He pointed to a fist-sized hole in his chest, right where his heart should be. That by killing me, he would transcend the chains that bound him and be granted the strength he needed to end him. I survived and spent 4 years chasing him down, trying to bring him home. At the end of it, at the edge of the world that had turned to ruin from a war against a madman, we stood together. He had finally gotten his revenge against his brother. He had learned his brother had been innocent and that the fault of the death of his family rested on the shoulders of a dead man who was afraid of change. We stood together, looking onwards towards a primordial being that was tearing the fabric of our world apart, and he smiled. Sasuke turned to me and shoved his blade through my heart. His last words to me were that this world didn't deserve to exist. The death of an entire world rests on my shoulders, all because I refused to kill a man obsessed with revenge. Luke is the same. He would watch the world burn rather than let things remain how they are. So ask yourself, what means more to you? His life or the lives of everyone you know? Naruto finished. I was hoping to speak to you alone, Annie. But then again, this is a lesson that all three of you needed to be taught. Naruto shrugged his shirt back on and yanked his hoodie back over his head. Zoe's eyes had an insurmountable distance present in them, while Percy and Annabeth had similar horrified looks etched onto their faces. Thalia merely looked sad. Line break. The rest of the train ride continued in an awkward silence. Naruto's revelation was a cold sting, a harsh reality that none of the young demigods wanted to acknowledge. Their discomfort and hurt was a horrible necessity. He was just satiated of watching people die. The train came to a slow stop and the group of 5 disembarked from the train. The sun beat overhead and the slight odor that could only be described as industrial tinged the air. Hey Annabeth, doesn't your dad live here? Percy asked curiously. Annabeth grimaced and nodded affirmative. Naruto paused in his tracks and glanced at Zoe. She paused as well, making eye contact with him and breathed out almost imperceptibly. She nodded. Annie. Why don't we stop by and say hello? Naruto said warmly. Annabeth gave him a weird look in response. But we're so close to the mountain, and… Naruto cut her off. Honestly, I'm pretty tired. I could use some sleep, a home-cooked meal. He trailed off. Annabeth shook her head in response, looking at him confused. Naruto simply smiled at her in response and the group found themselves cramming into the back of a cab. They pulled up to a rather sizable 2-story, white picket fence-style house. Naruto let out a low whistle. Our little Annie is a posh princess. Who would have thunk? Makes you wonder why she gives clam chowder the time of day. Naruto elbowed Thalia in good humor, making her snicker in response. Annabeth went on ahead, Thalia following her, rapping her knuckle on the door and began talking animatedly to her father. Naruto watched with a soft smile. Why are we here? Percy asked, clearly uncomfortable. Zoe gave him an indescribable look and turned her head to stare off somewhere else. Naruto's hand rose to the back of his head and he ran his fingers through his hair. Percy, there's a good chance we're not going to make it out of this. Any of us. And well, I've heard she's got a complicated home life. No regrets, right? Naruto smiled at the younger boy in a way that was almost pitying. Your last thoughts should always be of home. Annabeth isn't going to die. Percy snarled, shoving Naruto angrily. Naruto's shoulders shook and he began laughing mirthlessly. Percy felt cold and a wave of discomfort rushed over him at the chilling sound of the hollow laughter. Percy, we're up against a titan in his home turf with an unknown number of monsters. To make matters worse, we're on the ascent. We're climbing the mountain. To what is a newly forming Orthes. If just a few of us gets out of this alive, honestly, I'll be amazed. But if I can help it, Naruto trailed off. Yes? Percy asked, his tone cutting. You guys will make it back, Naruto gave him a lopsided grin. Rather than reassurance, Percy felt odd. Like he missed the punchline of a joke. With a huff, Percy pushed past him into the house, following after Annabeth and Thalia. You guys, huh? Zoe said softly, looking at the former object of her affections. Yeah. You, too. It's a promise, he shot her a wink and turned, continuing to stare at the house the 3 young demigods had entered. They were probably sitting at the dinner table by now, getting ready to eat. Talking about their adventures together, telling Annie's father tales of their exploits. A good last meal. The unbidden thought danced to the forefront of his mind. Not you. Caught that, did you? Yeah. Let's go inside. Line break. Dr. Chase, I presume? Naruto greeted, hand extended after having finally entered the residence. The man warily looked at the boy in front of him. He looked to be significantly older than the rest of the demigods, likely in his late teens to early 20s. Not to mention the hintingvisi, blue eyes. Yes. And you're Naruto, I assume? The doctor asked. Naruto nodded in assent and the man gave him a curious look. Your name is distinctly Japanese. Fish cake, like the ramen topping, he mused aloud. Zoe's hand slapped to cover her mouth in an attempt to stifle the laughter. Naruto's eye twitches violently. Yet your blonde hair denotes a European descent. How odd. It's an old form of Japanese and it means Maelstrom. Naruto corrected in what seemed like a genial tone. At that, the man's demeanor visibly brightened. Really, I've never heard of that translation. He pulled out a chair and gestured for Naruto to sit in it and took a seat at the opposite end of the table. Annabeth turned and saw the two older men conversing and poked Thalia, mouthing something Naruto couldn't quite discern. The younger demigods drifted somewhat near the table where Zoe had followed suit and taken a seat next to Naruto. It comes from the Elemental Nations period during the early formation of the Shinto religion. It was a popular name amongst an islander culture. Naruto said stiffly, acutely aware of the attention that was now on their conversation. I've studied the Shinto traditions, thoroughly fascinating stuff. The iconography is more artistic in form than the majority of other religions, Dr. Chase began excitably. It almost suggests that rather than being deities from creation, they were people with astounding power. Such as Susanoo, the mighty storm god, and his beautiful sister Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun. The Sesperts and I hesitate to call them spirits because accounts of them seem almost historical in nature and well, knowing that the Greek pantheon exists, it would be foolish to assume other pantheons weren't manifested on this plane of existence, no. I wonder how exactly that works. Do these separate pantheons interact? How were these pantheons established in the first place? And what exactly were the gods before they achieved divinity? It almost suggests divinity is gained by worship as opposed to being an instant manifestation. The man ranted and Naruto increasingly became more internally horrified at every word. Zoe's face was pale as a sheet yet set in stone, betraying nothing. Immortal. Unraveling one of the most tightly kept secrets at a dinner table. Die immortales. I pray his liberal use of names hasn't doomed us all. Dr. Chase. Names have power. Some musings are best kept to oneself, especially should someone be listening that the information might cause harm to. Naruto warned not so subtly, his head cocking slightly towards the three young teens who were determined to act as if they obviously weren't eavesdropping. It's just such an interesting concept. In order for there to be multiple gods of a single thing, it would have to be determined by the nature of aspects. Or, perhaps it has to do with the belief as a whole. If we do a direct comparison of two gods, say, Apollo and Amaterasu, Naruto choked. Then one could argue that Apollo is the weaker of the two sun gods, since Amaterasu is the head of her own pantheon. In fact, you could say Amaterasu is the true sun deity. Naruto stood, his chair falling behind him. He glanced, panicked, at Zoe, who had a look of horrible realization. She looked at him aghast. He shook his head mutely, and she swallowed. Professor Chase. I'm going to have to cut this conversation short. I'm remarkably tired. Would it be alright if we spent the night here before ascending to Molly's? The man, shooken from his contemplations, looked at the young man in surprise that he was there. Oh. Of course, yes, please make yourselves at home. We have a guest room and there's several couches. The older professor gestured around his house listlessly. Thank you. Naruto took Zoe's hand and guided her without a word toward the empty guest bedroom and shut the door. He took a deep breath. Zoe stood, ramrod stiff. Your very existence. Yeah. Would have been a lot simpler if I'd died all those years ago, huh? Naruto chuckled. It was quite a shocker to find out that my mother held divinity as well as my father. Them both being mortals at the time is the only reason I'm not technically part of a pantheon. Shit, my agelessness has nothing to do with gods at all, just a cute little spirit who got placed under house arrest, he joked. Naruto, this is no joking matter. If knowledge of thyself got out in mass it would compromise every pantheon. Zoe waved her hands about, taking panicked breaths. Naruto grabbed her hand and gave her a wry grin. The tomorrow problem, huh? He pulled her into bed next to him and the two drifted off into the realm of Morpheus. After the flash of light that overtook him when his brother and all but blood sealed their fate in the pocket dimension that Obito's Kamui had placed them in, the first thing he remembered was the warmth. It was unbearable, not quite hot enough to burn the skin from his flesh, but excruciating. He attempted to open his eyes, but the red glow seared into his skull and begged to be squeezed back shut. The ground below him was rocky. He could feel a coat of what felt like mud pushing up through his clothes and coating between his fingers. How long have I been here? I've been walking for so long. After some time, he finally was able to open his eyes. The world was a dull crimson and the ground below was somewhat more liquid than solid. It smelled of blood, decay, and a musk associated with somewhere better left forgotten. Inhumane wails pierced the air at random intervals, sending shivers throughout his entire body. He attempted to stand, at the very earth beneath him seemed to want to bring him back down to his knees. After a few tries, he finally made it to his feet and began walking. He wasn't quite sure where. He wasn't quite surprised. He was a shinobi and had killed. It was only fair that he be doomed to eternal torment after his death, and he was quite sure he was dead. After all, you didn't tend to survive decapitation, even if you had a giant fox sealed inside your gut. There was a crunching beneath his feet. Cautiously, he maneuvered the mud beneath him to uncover what he'd stepped on. A cracked skull, fractured in several pieces, grinned back up at him. He morbidly grinned back. "Glad to see you, too." He pushed further on, beginning a tricky ascent. He reached the top and attempted to stand, planning to take a short rest. The ground beneath him gave, and he was sent tumbling for what felt like miles. Lacerations opened up across his body, and he could feel the blood beginning to drench the itcher beneath him, mixing his blood into the sanguine. Finally, he came to the stop and took a pained breath. "Well. You're a handsome fellow," a distinctly feminine voice sounded. He looked up into chromatic eyes that seemed akin to a rainbow in nature. Yet it was dull, muted, practically lifeless. Her face was a twisted mockery of a smile, full of loathing for everything. She was a contradiction. Hideously beautiful. The demi-being locked away in Tartarus. How odd. Yet you radiate a strength that is fearsome. She bent over his fallen body, the outer part of her hand brushing a clump of hair that had been drenched in the blood spilled from his forehead. "My lord would be interested in you, I think. If only as a pet." She snapped her fingers, and manacles the color of midnight formed in a flicker around his wrists. A chain appeared linking them, and it suddenly shrunk, drawing his hands together. She grabbed the link and pulled him to his feet, causing a groan to escape him. "What is Tartarus?" he rasped. The woman looked at him dubiously and rolled her eyes. "The prison. For the scariest, meanest, most vile beings there are. And since you were thrown in here, you must be one of them." She looked at him, sizing him up. "If I'm honest though, you look almost identical to Apollo. In fact, I think you were him, except he's in chains on Olympus," she said thoughtfully, putting a finger to her cheek in thought. "And your eyes, they're colder. Darker. Like mine." She leaned in, eyeballing him. "You're really quite handsome," she commented sultrily. He attempted to laugh, but it came out more as a joke. "If I look like anything how I feel, I'm afraid I'm going to have to tell you that you have terrible taste." "What would a mortal know of taste?" she sniffed. "Now, be silent. We're at the exit." A staircase, revealed by two open obsidian double doors, stood in what seemed to be plain space. Humanoid shapes clawing at each other were chiseled into the stone, each decorated with a terrifying visage and faces that screamed murder. And next to the grotesque doors stood a masculine figure clad in armor that sucked in all light. Gleaming, red eyes peered at the pair, with hands clasped over the pommel of a large sword wedged in the ground. The woman nodded at him, yet received no response. She dragged him with her towards the door. Just as they were passing, the gauntlet-clad hand reached out, grabbing the blond man's hair, and yanked him in front of him. Those eyes that could only be described as bewildered him, and for the first time since he was a child, he felt terrified. He was certain he was about to die, and then there would be nothing. He would cease to exist. Yet, to his surprise, the thing before him began to laugh. It was deep, guttural, and utterly inhuman, filling him with a sense of dread. It released him and resumed its steadfast, stoic posture. The woman was the color of ash and looked just as terrified as he felt. She grabbed the chain binding his hands together and ascended the stairs with a bit more urgency. They traversed the steps in silence, both too afraid to speak. He glanced at her, the woman who had dragged him from the hellhole he'd been stuck in. 16,593. The number of times he had collapsed from exhaustion and sleep overtook him. After all, that was the only way you could sleep there, the pain of the heat forcing you to stay awake. He wasn't quite sure how he'd survived. The odd creatures he killed down there would reform and chase him down, remembering how he had reduced them to that gold dust. It would take several times, but after killing them over and over, they'd get the hint that he just wasn't going to go down. He could only assume that the sleep he did get was as short as the respite between attacks. It was thousands of steps. As if they had walked from the very bowels of the earth. But they finally saw a blue sky and light shining down into the depths below. How long had it been since he'd seen clouds? "You're crying," the woman muttered, looking at him in confusion. Her eyes widened. "How long were you down there?" Full-bodied sobs racked through him and he collapsed to the grass below, and the woman watched him awkwardly. Green grass. He could smell the leaf around him, taste the water in the air. He was out. He was alive. "Get up." The woman kicked him and he forced himself to his feet. He obediently followed the woman through a city filled with strange beings that seemed akin to the creatures he saw below, yet more humanoid. She led him to a marble palace, lined with rows of columns, all the way to a throne room where a man with dark hair and a well-trimmed beard sat with a scythe in his lap. He was surrounded by people milling about, engaged in conversation. On his right stood a beast of a man with rippling muscles and a face of chiseled stone. The woman pulled him before the man. "Ark, my messenger, what is this thing you've delivered to me?" The man spoke in a quiet volume, yet his voice shook the air. His knees shook, but he remained standing, staring directly at the man. "Lord Kronos, I found this man wandering Tartarus," Ark revealed, bowing her head in submission to the throne man. Kronos quirked his brow and gestured for him to come forward. "What is your name, boy?" "It's Naruto," he rasped. His body ached and he was on the brink of passing out. The air here was so cold. He shivered. "Are you cold?" the Kronos asked, confused. The giant of a man next to him chuckled. "It's freezing out here compared to down there," Naruto smiled back, his eyes squinting slightly in pain at the exertion. Kronos looked thoughtful at that and peered at him. "How long were you down there?" "Dunno, I fell asleep 16,000 times, maybe that many days," he guessed. The other man's eyes widened at that and a savage grin overcame his face. "Tiled, I've never heard of someone falling asleep in Tartarus." Kronos laughed cruelly. Naruto tried to laugh as well, but it came out as gasps. Unable to stand anymore, he fell to his knees. His eyes felt so heavy. "I want him." "Nephew, he's more skeleton than warrior." Kronos gestured haphazardly at him. "He survived Tartarus. I want him." Kronos looked thoughtful for a second and then nodded. "A demonstration first. Should he kill his opponent, then he is yours. I will not have a weakling serving me." The man nodded and waved to an attendant. A few minutes later, an armor-clad man dressed in various leathers stood before them, armed with a long spear. "Should you defeat this man, you are free to return home, human," the large man voiced. "He looks dead already," the leather-clad man muttered. He raised his spear. Naruto climbed to his feet. Acute C. Sedilla Macroni." The man with the spear rushed forward. Naruto grunted and released a yell, throwing his hand forward. Flames burst from him, enveloping the man. The smell of burnt flesh enveloped the room and Naruto felt at home, reminded once again of the red wasteland that he knew was deep below. Silence filled the hall. Kronos stared at him, eyes narrowed. The large man's foot tapped against the floor, his right hand twitched. "So Naruto, tell me, who is your father?" "Minato." "Your mother?" "Kushina." Kronos brought his hand to his beard and stroked it. He turned to the man at his side. "He's yours, Atlas. Do with him as you will." With a wave of his hand that Naruto understood as a dismissal, Atlas stepped forward and clasped Naruto's shoulder. He gestured to the crowd and a beautiful girl stepped forward. Her skin was olive, smooth, and she moved with an ethereal grace. Raven locks entwined with golden hoops swayed with each step, hypnotizing him. "Zoe, take this man to a room. Make sure he is well fed." "Yes, father." Walking. So much walking. And following. He was so tired. The girl guided him through halls illuminated dimly by braziers. The stone below his bare feet felt freezing against the blisters that burst with every step. So much pain. So tired. He took a step and stumbled, sprawling to the floor. The girl gasped and dropped to her knees next to him. He rolled onto his back and she cradled his face, placing his head in her lap. "Are you okay?" she asked, eyebrows furrowed in worry. He gave her a thumbs up and attempted to choke out words. His throat was raw, having been accustomed to the dry air of Tartarus. Having spoken so much already, it seems as if his body couldn't muster another single word. "You must stand. We must get you to a bed." She tried to lift him and Naruto shook his head in response, releasing a pained groan. Regardless, she lifted him, arm trembling slightly as she did. He grunted in pain and more balanced himself on his limbs as opposed to stand. She positioned his arm around her shoulder and they took shuffling steps. Blood and pus poured from the open wounds covering his body, dripping onto the pale white cloth the girl wore. The fabric rubbed against his bare chest, further aggravating the open wounds, yet he hardly noticed. Pain had become his constant companion. They reached the end of the hall and she pushed open a wooden door that revealed a small room with a bed tucked in the corner. She slowly lowered him into the bed. He collapsed backwards, unable to move anymore. After some maneuvering, she got him into a reclined position and grimaced at the stains and blood that covered her. "Sleep. There will be food and water when you awake." He eyed her. She began to turn and he raised his arm. Zoe paused and turned back to him. "You?" She looked at him questioningly until her face softened. "Yes. I will be here as well." He closed his eyes and a feeling of falling overtook him. Naruto's eyes fluttered open. Next to him, she lay softly breathing, eyes shut. Each breath left in a shallow quick burst, making barely a sound. Her raven hair framed her face, having been let loose of the braid she had began to keep it in. He reached forward, tracing her cheek gently. And here you are. The younger demigod sat around the table, eyeing the lunch that Annabeth's stepmother had made. Naruto had taken his time getting out of bed and it was already past noon. No one had seen him since earlier that morning. Thalia was in a terrible mood, viciously stabbing into the plate in front of her, and Annabeth had been rather reserved since their arrival at her family home. Percy sat uncomfortably, eyeing his companions, occasionally glancing towards the blonde enigma who sat sharpening one of those oddly shaped swords of his on the living room couch. Each time the small stone in the man's hand slid across the blade, releasing a sharp grinding sound, Thalia would flinch. Her eyebrows were furrowed tightly together and the knuckles of her hand clasping the fork was stark white. Annabeth eyed her cautiously, eating her food slowly. Zoe was tightening the drawstring of her bow. Percy thoughtfully withdrew the pen that served as Riptide's alternate form and spun it between his fingers. With a click, the blade sprung into being. He eyed the blade carefully and polished it with the sleeve of his shirt after blowing a hot breath on it. When he could see his reflection, he nodded to himself and yawned. He noticed that all of his companions were staring at him incredulously and his face burned with embarrassment. "You feel pretty yet?" Naruto's mouth twitched in amusement. Percy shrugged. "What are we waiting for?" he asked, brow furrowed. Naruto kept sharpening the blade of his sword. He paused and took a deep breath. "When I was about 2 years younger than you, I began missions on which I knew there was the possibility I would have to take someone's life or watch my friends die in my arms. Where we're going now, we have no backup. There could be hundreds of monsters. There's definitely a Titan in Layton. Those two alone could kill us. It's a very real possibility that some of us may die." Naruto eyed the younger demigods who had all paled dramatically. Percy's legs shook as he bounced his knees and Annabeth had her arms firmly crossed in front of her chest. Thalia looked tired. "If I can help it, none of you are going to die today. The day we began this quest, I told you that if we are about to die and I tell you to run, you run. That holds especially true today. None of us are heroes. You guys are kids, Zoe is a park ranger and I'm not much better than the bad guys. So don't be a hero. Your job is to stay alive for your friends and family. If Atlas charges, you flee. If Layton attacks, you flee. Leave the big ones for me, okay?" He smiled at them. Zoe's lower lip trembled, but she nodded regardless. "Your priority is getting Artemis out of there and warning the gods that Atlas has escaped his burden. I've grown kind of fond of you guys. I promise I won't let anything happen to you." Naruto's blade disappeared in a black flame and he leaned forward. "So. Here's the plan. Line break." Her hands shook as she clutched her bow. Never had she felt as helpless as she did now. "What other choice do we have?" Zoe thought to herself miserably. The trek up the mountain was somber, melancholy, and a sense of resignation rested like a fog on the shoulders of the demigods. The mist-veiling sections of the mountain wavered at the edges of their vision, giving glimpses into the thicket of unnaturally large deer and fauna that seemed too verdant and alive to belong to the modern world. Power and something pulsed in the air. Zoe took in a deep breath as a familiar set of golden gates shimmered into appearance. Naruto's steadying hand lightly pressed against her back and he smiled down at her reassuringly. "Welcome home," he joked. "Seems like they forgot a welcoming party. Lucky us." The gate slowly swings open, almost inviting them in. "Well. That's ominous," Thalia commented in a low tone, grasping her spear tightly and bringing her shield to her forefront. Percy nodded and brandished Riptide. They pushed forward at a steady pace. "Remember, stay quiet. The enemy's number is unknown and if we get caught this early, there's no chance of us getting to the summit and saving Auntie." Naruto brought up the front, each step as light as a feather, akin to the passing of a breeze. The Garden of Hesperides was just as beautiful as she remembered it. She'd read the Christian Bible once and it seemed parallel to the described Eden. Beautiful shades of green, brimming with life bathed the area, with flickers of color dotting the thicket, calling attention to the numerous flowers of a variety that had long receded from the waking world. How she loved strolling in this very garden, following the ponds and streams throughout. It had existed long before her time, before even her father's time. How it was maintained, she never knew, but it seemed to grow in itself, just as the fauna inside of it. The familiar winding path ushered feelings into her that she had long forgotten, and the memories of her childhood danced to the forefront of her mind. She nervously thumbed the drawstring of her bow. As they continued up the path, a cherry blossom tree sat just across a small, ornate wood bridge. Two paths diverged, circling around it, before meeting once more and continuing deeper into the garden and up the mountain. She watched the blonde man she was so fond of come to a sharp halt. "Sakura," he breathed so softly she thought she'd imagined what he said. "Didn't I plant this tree?" she asked. Percy and Thalia glanced at Naruto quizzically. "I did. I'm surprised they didn't cut it down," he mused. "You never betrayed them," Zoe replied shortly, almost accusingly. Naruto's gaze hardened. I wasn't fawning over some hero, Naruto said coldly. She flinched and clenched her jaw. She began to speak, but Naruto cut her off. Now isn't the time. Her jaw audibly clicked shut and Naruto turned to the pair of demigods with him. From now on, you two follow off to the sides of the path, in the trees. Make sure you can still see the path. He began to speak slightly louder, Annie, stick with them in the trees. She replied in the affirmative softly, her disembodied voice resonating from where she stood under the invisibility of the cap. If we get detected, you're our last hope. Remember that. As they went into the thicket of the trees, the older pair continued to trek. Naruto's hands rummaged in his pockets. Whether or not he was nervous, Zoe couldn't tell. What sounded like the hiss of a snake echoed and a foul, acidic odor wafted through a clearing. Curled around the twisted trunk of a tree that held apples of gold rested the serpentine body of what could only be described as a 100-headed dragon. Its heads were a writhing mass, similar to what one would expect a pit of snakes to look like. Many rested atop one another, eyes shut. Naruto gestured towards the woods, ushering the young half-bloods back out. Annie, take off the hat, you'll only provoke him, he ordered. Him? What the hell is that thing? Percy frantically gestured at the beast, a panicked look adorning his face. That is Layton. My sweet dragon, Zoe said hotly, irritation coursing through her. Layton is most certainly not a thing, child. You four stay as far away from the tree as you can. I'm going to try and hold his attention, Layton only attacks those who stray too close to the tree, Naruto informed. Zoe looked at him bewildered. Layton would never attack me. Zoe, now really isn't the time. She glowered and approached the sleeping dragon. Coppery eyes glistened beneath the folds of the scaled eyelids, and a single head raised from the entangled mass of serpentine heats. It let out a soft hiss that slowly became louder the closer Zoe came, and more heads rose to join her. Sweet gentle Layton, she murmured. She's fucking crazy. Thalia gasped. You three, go. Naruto ordered, sending the trio scampering. Do you remember how we played along the stream? Zoe cooed, raising a hand towards the dragon. Its hisses grew louder, and the head that was intently focused on her flared its nostrils. Suddenly, its eyes became lidded and it leaned down towards her, pressing one of its many heads into her hand. I missed you, so, she said sorrowfully, stroking the underside of his jaw. The mighty dragon almost purred before suddenly jerking upright and releasing a startling hiss. So, she indeed was foolish enough to return, a dusky voice pierced through her. And here I thought you were one of my more intelligent sisters, they remarked. Hesperi. Obviously. She remarked. She shimmered out of the shadows. Her olive skin nearly blended in with the oak, but the white, form-fitting dress and golden cuffs and hoops should have given her presence away. Where did you? Do you not remember the gifts you once had, sister? Gifts you gave up to join the foolish huntress, Hesperi scoffed. Zoe grimaced and nodded. Where are the other three? She asked. Entertaining one of father's guests. Personally, I've always hated that womanizer, but he is undeniably powerful. Zoe glanced at Naruto who had a pained look on his face. Just as they feared, there was an extra variable. Honestly, the nerve of you two. Naruto returning is understandable, this is where he belongs, with us. You? The traitor who spread her legs for a mortal. You are sullied. Disgusting, Hesperi sneered. Zoe flinched back, as if physically struck, and Naruto drew his sword, a red flame dancing along its curved edge. His eyes narrowed like chips of ice. Now, is that really necessary? I'd hate to hurt my favorite toy, Hesperi sked. She placed her fingers to her cheek and thought. Well, I really should be leaving. Naruto, I'm so glad you're back home. And Zoe, she suddenly snapped her fingers and Zoe was launched from her feet by a blow from her side. Zoe, quickly recovering, looked where her sister previously stood to see she had vanished. She heard a pain choke from behind her. Naruto stood, legs trembling. The head that Zoe had been caressing seconds before and sunk its teeth into his shoulder, previously the space where her head had occupied. Irritated at having missed his prey, Layton tossed him to the side and with a hiss, coiled back tightly around the tree. Its many heads were trained on the pair, the coppery eyes glowing as if molten. Naruto lay in the grass, clutching his shoulder. Zoe rushed to her feet and slid onto the ground next to him. Her knees rubbed roughly against the grass and dirt, opening small cuts along her knees. She heard footsteps near her and voices, but it was all indiscernible from the sound of blood rushing in her head. Naruto lay pale, sweat mixing with blood and the foaming pus oozing from his flesh where Layton's teeth had sunk into. The flesh sizzled, shriveling around it. She palmed her waist, grabbing a small flask of water and dumped its contents onto his. Naruto grunted sharply, but the foaming did seem to subside. Naruto? Can you hear me? She asked softly, her tone oddly flat. I'm fine, he gasped out and struggled to his feet, falling once before seeming to be able to get his feet under him. Oh geez whiz, Percy muttered, looking at the man clutching his arm tightly to his side. Annabeth's legs trembled and Thalia stood, her lips forming words, but no sound came out. We have to keep going. Naruto shouldered past Zoe, who tried to keep him still and bring him back to a resting position. He took staggered steps and snarled over his shoulder. Move. With every step the group took, the wind picked up more and more. Zoe looked up and saw the swirling of dark clouds at the peak and the dark marble of the palace of Orpheus. As she looked back at Naruto, the one who had been the source of so much strife in her life, a terrible feeling welled up inside her. Line break. The flesh of his shoulder pulsed with an unnatural heat, racking his body with pain. He could feel Layton's venom coursing throughout his body, pulsing into his veins. Each beat of his heart would renew the pain, almost making him falter. Yet, Naruto had a task. He had to do this. They're going to make it through this. The palace was oddly empty. Its marble was cold and torches remained unlit. Light still illuminated the palace, despite the black storm clouds looming above and the low howl of the wind. A knot formed in Naruto's gut. I've got a bad feeling about this, Percy muttered. Naruto snorted and Percy released a yelp as Annabeth swatted his shoulder. No worries, Percy. The force is with us, the blonde grinned at him, flashing an eye smile. Kakashi, how did you do it? How did you smile even as you lead children to their death? They entered a sort of open-topped room where a black throne resided. In front of it stood in chains the familiar figure of Artemis, chained in place, holding up a cloud-like mass above her head. Beads of sweat flooded down her face and the veins of her arms bulged, ready to burst. Sitting in the throne was Atlas, and another man rested in Akleen. Various cushions were strewn about, some occupied by nymphs clad in only leaves and golden jewelry, who were feeding the unknown man a variety of fruits. He was remarkably attractive, almost glowing with beauty. Atlas had his spear resting across his lap haphazardly. Looking up, he observed their presence and grunted in response. He tapped the tip of his spear against the marble. Heroes. We have company. Heroes opened one of his closed eyes, eyeing the group who had walked in. With a long-suffering sigh, he sat up and gestured both his hands outward. The nymphs who had been kneeling at the edge of his clinipperted with a fit of giggles, yet he made no move to stand. Atlas raised a brow and stood instead. Fools. You must run. Flee. Artemis gasped out. Sorry auntie, but I don't leave anyone behind, Naruto smiled at her. The pain that had previously ripped through his being had faded. Atlas. I, Naruto Uzumaki, the ageless mortal, challenge you. No. You aren't strong enough. Artemis screamed. Atlas laughed. Naruto, fearsome you may have been, but you look dead already. Layton's venom has eaten away at you. He pointed his spear towards the tears in his orange sweatshirt where blood had pooled. Best that puts us on even grounds, the blonde mercenary smirked in response. Heroes clapped, snapping attention to him. Bravo, Naruto. As always, you're a man of passion, willing to die for those you love. You've always been my favorite, the only mortal who could ever hope to begin to understand me. Heroes. Honestly, I think I've actually missed our talks, Naruto chuckled. Heroes tutted and pointed at Atlas. Yet we both know you're going to fight him, which makes us enemies, Naruto. I'm afraid so. I only ask that you wait until the challenge is resolved before taking any action. Heroes hummed in thought for a second and dipped his head. He rested his hands at his side. Atlas scoffed. His help is not needed. He could never hope to stand up to me. Wait. Where's Luke? Annabeth pleaded. He's keeping a coffin company. Heroes waved her off. Naruto reached into his pocket and withdrew a keyring. With a tug, he pulled a key free and the midnight blade of his Nadachi stretched into existence. His hands clasped around its golden hilt. Atlas stroked his chin with a free hand and his voice rumbled. Before I kill you, I'd like to know where you obtained that sword. The gift from my mother. Their mother? As Atlas's brow furrowed, Naruto rushed forward, swinging the blade up with his uninjured arm. His strike landed true, yet superficially grazed the Titan's chest. As it completed its diagonal arc, he caught the hilt with his other hand, regaining the balance of the blade in his grasp. Naruto grit his teeth as pain once more burned through him. Atlas growled, jabbing the spear at his head. Naruto ducked, rolling forward, right into Atlas's guard. He lunged into him in an attempt to pierce his heart but was easily sidestepped. Atlas swung once more and the shaft of the spear connected with his wounded shoulder, realizing an audible crunch, shattering bone. Naruto's feet slid across the marble, knees bent to remain upright. The blow sent his body into a sort of shock, numbing all his feeling. He took a ragged breath. You're weak, Naruto. Just as the gods you now serve. Pathetic. Yet, I must give you credit. You protect these children rather than leave them to do their divine work. That is just. I am proud that I saved you, despite it having come to this. You have my word, they three may leave after you die. However, Zoe will answer for her crimes and Artemis must remain. I'm sure you understand. The Titan's baritone voice shook the air. I'd say thank you, but I assure you, it's your head that's going to be rolling. Naruto rushed forward once more, swinging his blade at the Titan's neck with a leap. The blade met the haft of the spear, yet Naruto held onto the hilt and used the rotational force to launch a sweeping kick into Atlas's chiseled face. Naruto landed, breathing's head twisted to the side, and blood trickled from his nose. Blade now held in a reverse grip, he rushed forward and leapt feet first, putting all his weight into a blow to the Titan's chest, making him stumble backward. Atlas slammed the spear into the ground next to him, shattering the tile and steadying himself. A worthy opponent. Your entire body is your weapon, he complimented. Mind the tile, cousin, it's antique, Heroes piped up. Atlas sent him a scalding look and Naruto gave a pained laugh. Naruto, you need to run. Please, I beg you, take them and go. Artemis cried. Artemis, you're far more important than little old me, he glanced at her. Blood had begun to trickle from the corner of his mouth. The blow he had sustained to his shoulder must have been more damaging than he initially thought. He returned the sword to its key form, the weight having become more than his body could handle. Thrusting a hand forward, flame burst out, rushing at his foe, who batted it to the side and charged forward with a speed that belied his massive form. The Titan's muscles flexed, his arm rearing back as he prepared to thrust his spear forward. Naruto ducked underneath and twisted his body, uppercutting into the elbow of Atlas's extending arm. A pop signified the dislocation of the behemoth's elbow, causing him to drop the spear, which Naruto swiftly kicked away. Atlas clutched his own arm, jaw clenched tight. Then, his face softened. Since the day I saw you before me, beaten and bloodied, I knew you were destined for great things. Watching you fight proved it to me. You were a beautiful sight, truly. A mortal who, like myself, had an insurmountable endurance. You radiated strength. You were everything I had wanted Hayas to be, everything he should have been. I remember when I first put you in command against a contingent of Zeus's forces. You led a handful of my men into a battle that was critical to our offensive and came back without casualties. They sang stories of how you charged ahead, beckoning for them to follow as you cut your enemies down left and right for many nights. I think that was when I began to think of you as my own. Naruto looked on, his eyes empty of emotion. A shinobi is one who endures. Atlas's hand launched out, wrapping around Naruto's throat. He squeezed and Naruto flailed frantically. Yet, you fight on the wrong side now. Father and son, against one another. I molded you, made you into what you are, and the Olympians take you from me. Just as they took our home, our lives, and our rightful places as rulers of this world. I promise you, your death won't be in vain. Naruto swung his body forward and wrapped his legs around the Titan's giant arm and twisted himself free. The maneuver sent them both sprawling. Naruto clutched his neck gasping desperately for breath. Your ways were no better than theirs, we killed so many, Naruto gasped out. What are the lives of worms worth if not the dirt in which they're eyed? Atlas asked cruelly. And you ruled that dirt, guess that makes you the dirtiest, Naruto wheezed and raised his middle finger in defiance. Atlas roared, charging forward. Glancing behind him, Naruto smiled internally and waited. Time slowed to a crawl. 3 more steps. 2. 1. He leapt upward, laying a hand on Atlas's shoulder and vaulting off him. Naruto sprawled onto the ground and looked up, watching as Atlas stumbled forward, barreling into the form of Artemis, slamming her from her position. The cloud-like mass slammed down onto his back and Atlas howled in fury. Naruto took deep ragged breaths as the Titan struggled to his knees, shifting the mass onto his shoulders. Naruto. Atlas snarled. Heroes howled with laughter, eyes alit with mirth. What a show. Bravo, bravo. Artemis gaped at the sight and Naruto stumbled towards her. With a flash, he once more summoned his sword and cut the chains that bound her. Auntie, take the kids and go. And get Zoe out of here, he turned to Heroes, eyeing him. Heroes? Wait. Atlas rumbled, grunting from the strain. Heroes paused, surprised at the request, and lowered his hands. Naruto. Come before me. Naruto leveled his eyes with the Titan of endurance. This burden I am under, none will take it from me. The moon goddess taking my place was a fluke at best, Atlas spoke. His eyes were resolute. I have existed long. I have endured for just as long. My boy, I am tired. So tired of enduring the weight. Naruto's eyes widened. Tears welled up. I understand. He placed his hand on the Titan's chest and pulled at nature. The air quivered and lithothromed. Atlas smiled a peaceful look, shutting his eyes. Stone spread from where Naruto's hand sat, crawling over the skin of the Titan. It covered his face last, leaving the still impression of a man at peace with holding the world on his shoulders. Well, that was just so beautiful, tears flooded down from Hero's eyes, streaming down his face in an almost comical manner. Naruto eyed him warily, flanked by Artemis. Heroes. We're leaving. Unless you fancy fighting 2-on-1. Naruto threatened. Now wait a second. Let's have a chat, shall we? He beckoned a hand and a force yanked a yelping Thalia toward him and into his lap. He grabbed her arm, holding her in place. Zoe stepped forward, notching an arrow, and Percy drew riptide. The first conversation, he murmured. He waved his hand and a pool formed. Swimming inside it was the strangest creature, looking almost like a cow with a fishtail. "Bessie?" Percy yelled. "The fucking course Jackson's friends with the damn thing." "The Ephiatorus," Artemis exclaimed. "The Wadaha?" Naruto's face twisted. "It's a beast of power. The one who slays it will be granted immeasurable power, for if one is able to kill something of such innocence, they are able to kill anything," Artemis explained fearfully. "Basically. So. Girl. Thalia. What would you say to obtaining the power to topple the gods, have demigods receive the treatment they deserve, and to get revenge on your asshole parents that leave you to suffer for their errors without so much as a word of thanks?" Heroes offered. "And no." Thalia stuttered. "Aw. Why not? Don't you have a prophecy to fulfill?" Heroes chipperly questioned. "I don't want to. But it's your 16th birthday." "No, it's my 20th. Heroes pursed his lips and shrugged. "I guess it is. Huh. So much for that plan." Then he smiled and released her. Thalia quickly scampered to Naruto's side. "Now for the more interesting conversation." He rubbed his hands together mischievously. "So. Naruto. How have you been?" "Better. Kinda in a lot of pain right now." "What's a little pain in the pursuit of passion, huh?" "I think this is more than a little." Fair enough." Heroes shrugged once more. "Anyway. In the last 2 millennia, you've occupied my thoughts once or twice. And then, more recently, I heard something interesting. You remember where you woke up in Tartarus? At the edge of the gap?" Artemis took a sharp breath at hearing that. "Yeah? Well. Word is that someone else seems to have appeared there. An immortal. At the beginning of yet another divine war. How interesting, no?" Zoe took an angry step forward. "Enough of these games. Tell me why I shouldn't release an arrow into thine head." Heroes gave her a disgusted look. "Ah. My least favorite individual. You know, brat, there's such a thing as misplaced passion and just being plain foolish. And you're perhaps the greatest fool. Truly, did you actually think that a mortal will lava his enemy? In a time of war? You're even more of an idiot than that Romeo character that Shakespeare seemed so fond of. At least he did the favor of offing himself, too bad you didn't do the same," he sneered. "Anyway. I believe Artemis has a solstice meeting and I have more interesting things to do. Until we meet again, Naruto." He waved and disappeared in a shower of gold. Naruto released a breath he didn't realize he was holding and his shoulders slumped. Exhaustion filled him to the point where he was too tired to even realize just how damaged his body was. Artemis ducked under his arm, lending him support. "Thanks, Auntie," he said, resting his head atop hers. "Anything for my favorite nephew," she chortled. "You were a true hero today, Naruto." The pair stumbled towards the rest of the group that rapidly approached. "NGH, don't say that. Heroes are idiots. Fighting against a titan alone is something an idiot would do. Fighting against Atlas? A fool." "Fair enough." Thalia ducked under his other arm, taking some of the weight off of the also exhausted goddess. "You were amazing." She gushed. Naruto nodded in appreciation, too tired to muster words. He looked at Artemis, who smirked. She brought a whistle to her lips and a slew of reindeer linked to a sled appeared in a moonbeam, trotting several feet before coming to a stop. "What's with you and Dad having such weird rides?" Artemis ignored him and gestured to the demigods to climb aboard. She glanced at the Ephiatorus. "Jackson. Tell the beast to go to Olympus. It should understand you," she commanded. "Probably because he has cow brains too," he snarked into her ear. The goddess seized in response but retained her stoic visage. Once they had all climbed aboard, Naruto leaned on her. Having reached safety at last, he let exhaustion overtake him. "Line break. We must dispose of the beast," Athena said. "It's the best solution. It prevents both disputes over who retains the beast, thereby having power over the rest of us, as well preventing our enemies from gaining its power." "It's a fish, surely it's not that strong," Ares rolled his eyes. Athena scowled at him in response. "True, it is a denizen of the sea, therefore it should naturally fall into my care," Poseidon suggested pointedly, looking at Zeus, who rubbed his temples in annoyance. "Enough. The best dies," Zeus decided, irritation plain to see. "But you can't kill it. Bessie's innocent." "God, I really love this kid." "Hey Bessie." Poseidon had a distant look on his face. Athena sighed sufferingly and Ares howled with laughter. Apollo and Hermes had similar shit-eating grins on their faces, while Artemis merely looked uncomfortable. Hephaestus's reaction was indiscernible, while Aphrodite and Demeter cooed at the beast. "All life is sacred. To kill wantonly would make us no better than those that came before us, Demeter said distantly, her attentions and affections more focused on the beast. You better believe I'm gonna milk this for all it's worth, Hermes poked at Apollo, who elbowed him back in response. Only once everyone stops being sobbleheaded, the two cackled. What would you suggest then, child? Athena looked at Percy imperiously. Percy gulped in response and looked at Naruto, who shrugged. With desperation, he looked at Annabeth, whose eyes seemed to be darting around, chasing after some invisible web of thought. Wait. Annabeth suddenly exclaimed. The throne room fell silent and her face flushed red from all the attention on her. My, a girl who doesn't like being looked at. How boring, Aphrodite murmured. Some recognize that there is more of value than looks, sister, Athena retorted. Go on, daughter. Well. What if Hephaestus was to create an aquarium for the Ephialtes here? Annabeth suggested, still flustered. Girl, I have far better things, Hephaestus began, but Naruto cut her off. Not bad, that'd set the beast on an equal ground of equal access to all the gods. And it'd make a pretty good decoration. This throne room has gotten pretty drab, Naruto trailed off. He clutched his arm as it twinged with pain. Dionysius's eyes narrowed. I'm against it. The murderer suggested it. What? I'm always happy to help decorate, as you know, Naruto smiled beatifically. Dionysius growled. It has merit. Husband, this is as it should be, Hera spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Her eyes had never left Naruto. Zeus sighed, dragging his palm down his face. Fine. Hephaestus, please construct the damnable beast a cage. If it becomes a problem, we can destroy it at a later date. Hephaestus grumbled, but nodded nonetheless. And now, the next order of business. Hades spoke from his stone chair. He gave Naruto a distinct look and Naruto rolled his eyes in response. We will not be executing my daughter. Husband, she is as much a threat to us as the Ephialtes. Hera intoned icily. Naruto rolled his eyes. This is stupid. Zeus, Poseidon and Hades all have brats running around and I've seen all of them in the past week. If we kill one, we have to kill them all and I don't like the idea of killing 4 kids. The room sat silent as everyone stared at him. Hades repeatedly slammed his head into his palm. Naruto glanced at Hades confused until realization dawned on him. Ah. Shit. Hades. Zeus yelled. Oh, do pipe down, brother. Let's not talk about the kids you have running around. Naruto flinched at that, grimacing at Hades who took that shot at him in response. Thalia looked at Hades questioningly and saw the look he gave Naruto. Her eyes widened. Jason, she whispered. Naruto's hand shot out, clamping down hard on her arm. Not. Now. She looked at him with an expression of pure fury. You? Knew. I said not now, Grace. Naruto said coldly. She flinched, looking at him with pure betrayal in her eyes. The prophecy isn't about her, she's too old, Apollo waved. All the gods looked at him in confusion. She's 20. Far too late for it to be her, he shrugged. The gods looked on and thought. So she lives. Do we kill Jackson, then? Ares asked eagerly. Most certainly not. Poseidon said angrily. Silence. No one is being executed and this meeting is over. Zeus yelled, thunder cracking. The Olympians fell silent, reduced to shooting dirty looks at one another. Ah, sibling rivalry, Naruto said wistfully. Not much experience with it? Percy asked. Nope. Naruto said with a pop, I'm an only child, I'm special. Special in the head, maybe, Zoe snickered. Ma, Zoe, don't be so rude, he whined in response. She entwined her fingers with his, tinkling with laughter. Naruto blushed lightly. The prettiest flower. He met Artemis's eyes, who raised an eyebrow in response, nodding toward their entwined hands. Naruto gave her a shrug. With the conclusion of this meeting, the solstice festivities will commence. Zeus clapped his hands together and rose, leaving the room. Many of the gods followed suit and Thalia started after her father. Naruto nudged her forward and she glared at him. Go talk to him. He has your answers. At that, her eyes widened and she rushed after him. Poseidon had pulled Percy to the side and Athena had done the same with Annabeth. His own father made a step towards him but was halted with a deadpan look. Apollo wiggled his eyebrows and made a lewd gesture, glancing pointedly at Thalia. Naruto gave him a threatening look and Apollo raised his hands in surrender, making his own swift exit. Zoe. I see you've made your choice. Artemis spoke, leveling her eyes with Zoe. I have. I would spend time with Naruto and join him on his journey. Zoe responded resolutely. Artemis paused and took a breath. For now, you will retain your status as a huntress. Should you lie with one another, that will be revoked. You are welcome to return should that not happen. Should it, you will always be welcome at my camp. Both of you. Enjoy the solstice, Artemis fled the room from that. The two stood in silence. So I guess we basically have your father's and your mother's blessing, Naruto wiggled his eyebrows. Don't get ahead of thyself, Naruto. I haven't decided any such thing. She paused and gave him a mischievous grin. After all, it would be too Greek of me to lie with you. Father did see you as his son. Naruto's face blanched and a look of disgust crept over him. Gross. What if Naruto saves Zoe Percy Jackson? End here and thanks for watching my video till the end.